For what? Well, we have ASD, which is a surface radar. Some airports have it, and some don't. The runway stuff.
So can you tell me?
That's what the controllers are supposed to do.
I'd like to call this Tampa City Council meeting to order. If we could have roll call, please.
Carlson. Hurtak.
Here.
Clendenin.
Here.
Henderson. Vieira. Miranda. Maniscalco.
Here. Thank you very much. At this time, I have a memo from,
We have a physical quorum.
oh. Thank you very much. At this time, I'd like to submit this memo to the record. Please be advised I will not be in attendance, not me. This is Councilmember Henderson. She will not be in attendance for the council evening meeting on January 18th, 2024 due to personal reasons, and kindly request the city clerk read this into the record. So there is your copy from Councilmember Henderson. Yes, Vieira is here. Carlson will be joining us shortly, so we will have at least 6 members. At this time, may I have a motion to open all the public hearings, and I'll do the housekeeping. Motion from Councilmember Miranda, second from Councilmember Clendenin. All in favor? Aye. Okay, we have quite a bit of housekeeping, sir, if you'd like to kick it off.
Yes, sir. Good evening, council members. Sam Thomas, Development Coordination. Our first item is item 1, TACPA 2228 is requesting a continuance to March 21st public hearing at 5:01 p.m.
All right. We have a motion to continue item number 1 from Councilmember Clendenin, second from Councilmember Miranda. Is there anybody in the public that wishes to speak on just the continuance from item number 1? This is non-quasi judicial, so you don't have to be sworn in. No, I don't have anybody sworn. Yes, sir? It's going to be item number 1. The request for continuance is for March 21st, 2024 at 5:01 p.m. at 315 East Kennedy Boulevard, Tampa, Florida 33602. We have a motion from Councilmember Clendenin, second from Councilmember Miranda. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, item 1 is continued. Yes, sir, go ahead.
Next item is item number 3, VAC 2321. It's requesting a continuance to the March 21st public hearing at 5:01 p.m.
All right, we have a request to continue item number 3, you said?
Yes, sir.
All right, to March 21st, 2024, 5:01 p.m., 315 East Kennedy Boulevard, Tampa, Florida 33602. We have a motion to continue from Councilmember Clendenin, second from Councilmember Miranda. Is there anybody here in the public that wishes to speak on the continuance only for item number 3? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right. Next up, sir.
Item number 4, REZ 2374 is requesting a continuance to March 21st public hearing at 5:01 p.m. as well.
All right, we have a motion to continue item number 4 to March 21st, 2024, 315 East Kennedy Boulevard, Tampa, Florida, 33602 at 5:01 p.m. Motion from Councilmember Clendenin, second from Councilmember Miranda. Is there anybody here that wishes to speak on the continuance for item number 4 only? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, next up, is it item number 7, sir?
Yes, sir.
All right.
REZ 2368 is requesting a continuance to the March 21st public hearing at 5:01 p.m.
Wait, I see a continuance to February 8th. Was the date changed, sir?
What number again was that, sir?
Item number 7.
Let me check with the applicant real quick.
And let the record show that council members Vieira and Carlson are here physically.
Sorry, I got
apologies,
stuck
it
in
is
terrible
February
traffic.
I'm sorry?
It is a request for February 8th public hearing.
Okay. So we have a motion to continue item number 7 to February 8th at 5:01 p.m., 315 East Kennedy Boulevard, Tampa, Florida, 33602 at 5:01 p.m. Third floor. We have a motion from Councilmember Clendenin, second from Councilmember Miranda. Is there anybody that here that wishes to speak on the continuance for item number 7? Just a continuance? No? And there's nobody registered? All in favor? Aye. All right, item number 10.
Next, item number 10, REZ 2383 is a misnotice and cannot be heard. Please remove it from the agenda.
May I have a motion to remove item 10?
This is also the second misnotice. Based on the rules and procedures, the case should be withdrawn.
All right, may I have a motion to
On this, I'm sorry, if you can, because you're making the request to have this withdrawn because following the rules, this is the second continuance.
Yes, sir.
All right. May I have a motion to withdraw?
Second
item number
misnotice.
10?
Second misnotice.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So the motion is to withdraw, correct?
Yes, sir.
We have a motion from Councilmember Miranda. Do we have a second? Second from Councilmember Clendenin. This is item number 10 to withdraw. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Item number 11, sir?
REZ 23105 is a misnotice and cannot be heard. Please remove it from the agenda.
All right, may I have a motion to remove item number 11 from the agenda? This is a motion from Councilmember Clendenin, second from Councilmember Miranda. All in favor? Aye. All right.
Then-
All right, and item number 12.
Yep, lastly, item number 12, REZ 2392 has withdrawn its application. Please remove it from the agenda.
Actually,
Wait, yes, sir?
for the record, it's already been withdrawn, so this is on an error. If it could just be a motion to remove, please.
Okay. We have a motion to remove item number 12 from the agenda from Councilmember Clendenin, second from Councilmember Miranda. All in favor? All right, so let me just take a look at this. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 items.
Yes, sir.
Very
And if I
good.
may, for the public, I'll read those items out just so everyone is aware of what
Yes.
items are moving forward. The items moving forward are item 2, REZ 2261, item 5, REZ 2358, item 6, REZ 2366, item 8, REZ 2388, and item 9, REZ 2311.
Very good. All right, at this time, if anyone that is going to be speaking tonight is going to come up, please stand and raise your right hand, and we will swear you in, since these are all quasi-judicial for the rest of the night.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth? Thank you. You may be seated.
Thank you very much. We'll start with item number 2. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, Chair and members of City Council. My name is Dana Crosby Collier, and with me this evening is Rob Masakowski. I'm an Assistant City Attorney in the City Attorney's Office, and he's with our litigation practice group. I'm here to present item number 2, REZ 2261, on tonight's agenda in order to provide you with the special magistrate's recommendation from a request for relief filed by SE Combined Services of Florida. The request for relief was filed pursuant to Section 7051 of the Florida statutes, which is the Florida Land Use and Environmental Dispute Resolution Act, the FLUDRA. I want to make a few brief comments before providing the history of this application and the details of the proposed settlement. Unlike the standard rezoning applications before you this evening, anytime you consider a settlement proposal of this nature, your role in this matter is legislative, which allows you, the council, to consider items outside of the Land Development Code and Comp Plan, including but not limited to the impact and public interest resulting from the proposed settlement. After I conclude my presentation, you will hear briefly from Special Magistrate Scott Steady, who was retained by the city and the applicant to be the special magistrate in this matter. Once Mr. Steady confirms the mediation process that we followed and his recommendation, you will hear from city staff, followed by Planning Commission staff, the applicant, and the public. After public comment, please allow the applicant the opportunity to provide rebuttal. Finally, as you consider the testimony and evidence entered into the record of tonight's hearing, please remember that although the special magistrate's recommendation is a public record, actions or statements of the representatives for the city and for the applicant are evidence of an offer to compromise and are inadmissible in any further proceedings. I mention this in the event City Council is concerned about the possibility of setting a precedent with the special magistrate's recommendation. To give you a little overview of the FLUDRA process, your December 8th, 2022 meeting, in a 4-2 vote, City Council denied the rezoning from RM16 to PD, residential multifamily to PD planned development, which would have allowed the development of a funeral parlor and a cemetery on property located at 3602 North 50th and 3501 North 46th Street. Following Council's denial, the applicant filed a request for relief on January 6, 2023, alleging that the applicant had met his burden of proof in establishing consistency with the comprehensive plan and compliance with the Land Development Code. When the request for relief was originally filed with the city, I sent you all a memo and described the process that we would do for this section 70.51 Florida statute Fludra process. It does involve a two-step process. Step one of the process is the mediation. We meet before the special magistrate who conducts an informal mediation with the parties during which the applicant and the city consider alternative developments and designs for the plan. We considered things that would be responsive to your reasons for denial of the plan. In this case, the special magistrate conducted the informal mediation on April 17th, 2023. Following that mediation, the parties continued to meet and work through the issues with the plan in order to satisfy your concerns at your public hearing. On November 12th, 2023, after we reached agreement on the terms, the special magistrate issued a report and recommendation recommending favorable consideration of the applicant's redesigned plan. So the project before you today is vastly different from that which you saw on December of 2022. And so is your role tonight. As I mentioned at the outset, you're considering a settlement proposal, and your action tonight on the settlement agreement will be legislative. At the December 8th hearing, you may recall the developer presented a development plan that showed an impact of approximately 95% of a wetland that was located on the site. The development had not received approval from the Hillsborough County Environmental Protection Commission, and the City Council denied the rezoning application due to the failure of the applicant to meet its burden of proof regarding and provide competent substantial evidence that the development is consistent with our code and comp plan. Also finding that the proposed development did not provide for a wetland buffer and would result in a net loss of the wetland. Following mediation, the applicant created the revised application that is before you today. The revised application has received approval from the EPC to impact 10% of the wetland. Wetland mitigation will be provided adjacent to the existing wetland for any impacts proposed to the wetland buffer, as city staff will discuss with you in a moment in greater detail. Furthermore, in the initial application, the applicant requested a waiver to remove a non-hazardous grand tree. Good news, the revised application, the waiver has been eliminated so that no non-hazardous grand trees will be removed in the revised application. In a regular rezoning or quasi-judicial hearing, you're going to look solely at whether the applicant has demonstrated by substantial competent evidence that the project meets the city's regulation and is consistent with the comp plan. But because this is a settlement proposal, there are other factors that you must take into consideration, including the fact that the proposed settlement, if approved, will resolve the pending Fludra and will limit potential liability for the city. So pursuant to Section 7051, the Fludra Act, you have three options before you tonight. After hearing all the evidence and testimony presented with respect to the proposed rezoning and this revised application, and taking into consideration other matters presented tonight, you may accept the special magistrate's recommendation and proceed to implement the recommendation. In this case, implementation of the recommendation requires City Council to first adopt a motion to approve the special magistrate's recommendation and revised application, and then we would place the first reading of the rezoning ordinance on first reading for you to vote upon. A second reading on the ordinance will still be required at a later date. If you determine, City Council, that the applicant has failed to meet its burden, and after taking into consideration all the other matters, you may reject the special magistrate's recommendation. Finally, you may modify the special magistrate's recommendation with the applicant's acceptance of any changed terms and conditions. So I'm happy to answer any questions you have, and if there are none at this time, I'll turn the presentation over to Scott Steady, our special magistrate in this proceeding.
Any questions? Nope. Thank you very much. Yes,
Thank
sir.
you.
Please state your name.
Yes,
Excuse me, Mr. Steady.
yes. Chairman, Members of City Council, Scott Steady, I acted as the special magistrate on this matter. We had a mediation, as Dana said, on April 17th. It was successful. Basically, the applicant was there and city staff. Unlike others that I've dealt with, there were no other third parties, no other residents that had any concerns. It was basically addressing the issue of the wetlands and the mitigation. The applicant agreed that they would go back to EPC, get it delineated, deal directly, and bring back a plan that I believe City Council should consider, and I recommend. So I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. Any questions for the magistrate? No? Thank you very much, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, Chairman, Council, LaShawn Dock, Development Coordination. This is item number 2, and this is REZ 2261. This is for the property located at 3602 North 50th Street and 3501 North 46th Street. The applicant is represented by David Singer, and the request is to rezone the property from RM16 residential multifamily to PD plan development for a funeral parlor and cemetery. So I'll turn it over to Emily with Planning Commission to give her report, and I'll come back and give my report.
Thank you very much. Yes, ma'am. Please state your name.
Emily Phelan, Planning Commission staff. The subject site's located right here. You can see there's cemeteries to the north, and to the south are single-family residential uses, and to the east are residential uses as well. The site's within the Central Tampa Planning District, the East Tampa Urban Village, and the Highland Pines neighborhood. The site's not within an evacuation zone. The subject site is located here. It has 3 different future land use designations. The brown is the residential 20, the red is community commercial 35, and the pink is community mixed use 35. The community mixed use 35 and the CC 35 is located along North 50th Street, and to the south, where that single family neighborhood is the residential 10. A funeral home can be considered within the community mixed use 35 and community commercial 35 designations, and a cemetery can be considered within all 3 future land use designations. The subject site is adjacent to existing cemeteries, and there's a diverse range of uses within a half mile of the subject site. The proposed funeral home and cemetery would be appropriate, comparable, and compatible with the surrounding area. The comprehensive plan requires commercial uses to be appropriately buffered from residential developments, and the applicant is providing a 30-foot setback for the cemetery and a 6-foot tall wall wood fence, ensuring the development is appropriately screened from the adjacent residential uses. That is proposed on this side of the development. The comprehensive plan promotes pedestrian safety and encourages commercial development that enhances the city of Tampa's character and ambiance by requiring new commercial development to connect building entrances to public rights-of-way. The subject site is within a mixed-use corridor and a transit emphasis corridor. The PD provides a front door that faces the public right-of-way with pedestrian connections to the parking lot and to North 50th Street. Additionally, the majority of the parking is located in the rear of the building. While a sidewalk is not provided on North 46th Street, it was determined that a sidewalk is not feasible per General Note 17, the fee in lieu will be paid. Lastly, the comprehensive plan speaks at length to protecting wetlands. The applicant has worked with EPC to delineate the wetland and has an approved mitigation plan. In conclusion, the request is consistent with the character of the surrounding area and the long-range development plan and the future land use designations. And that concludes my presentation, if you have any questions.
Any questions? No, thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you again, Council. LaShawn Dock, Development Coordination. And again, this is REZ 2261. This PD request would allow for development of a funeral home and cemetery on site. The site is currently vacant, and I'll show you pictures of that site shortly. The proposal is to develop an 18,240 square foot building on site. And this would be contained within 446,870 square feet of land, which will be utilized for cemetery use on site. The maximum building height is 35 feet that is proposed within the PD plan. And just in summary, and I know Dana gave a brief background as to how we got here today, but just to explain and to let the public know, this is what's included within the staff report also. The revised application was submitted by the applicant, and they did receive approval from EPC, as mentioned earlier. Now the impact is 10% of the wetland area. Wetland mitigation is provided. And also, the applicant was requesting a waiver to remove a non-hazardous grand tree with the first submittal, and that waiver has been removed. So what I'd like to do is to show you the aerial of the site. So this is the site, which is identified here, outlined in red. This is North 50th Street. This is MLK. And then this is North 46th Street that borders to the west. So I'll show you pictures of the north end, the properties north of the site. And then this north end, there's no access on North 50th Street. You'd have to come down to East 26th Street, come around, and then come up North 46th Street to get to this west end, unless you come from MLK or from Lake. This is the site plan which was submitted, the recent site plan. So this is 50th Street, bordering on the east, and then this is 46th Street that's on the west of the site. So I can pull it down a little bit. So what is proposed is access to the site from 50th Street on the southern boundary of the site, two-way travel, and then also the building is proposed to be located here. This, you may remember, is the wetland area. And previously with the first submittal, everything was shifted north. And then this parking, the northern parking spaces were here near the boundary of the site. So that has been shifted. The building is completely out of this wetland area. And then also what has been proposed is a retaining wall here around that wetland area, which will be placed on site. But you can see additional surface parking here located on the west, and then this portion of the site along the west would be dedicated for cemetery use. And then here are elevations of the building. So this would show you the left side of the building. This is the rear elevation, and then this would be the right side of the building, and then the bottom picture is the front of the building, which orients to 50th. And then I have pictures of the site. So this is the eastern boundary of the site. The site is heavily wooded. As I mentioned, the site is vacant. This is from the site, and this is if you're looking south on 50th Street. So the site is here on the right in the picture. I'll swing around to the west end of the site. This is on 46th Street, looking near the site. This is a view if you're on the west end of the site. This is the site here. And if you're looking north on 46th Street, this is the existing entrance on the site. This is the west side still. This is another view on the west end of the site. This is on 50th Street. And then this is the surrounding use on 50th. This is to the north, the credit union. This is another site north of the site. This is the Behavioral Health Center. That's another view from the north side, the site just adjacent to the north. This is west of the site. This is across 50th Street, the commercial. Another view west of the site. The DRC staff reviewed the request and finds the request inconsistent. It is due to the access to the local street from transportation. And then there are site plan modifications to be made. There are 2 items that are they addressed all the other changes requested by staff, and those are minor notes to be placed on the site plan between first and second reading. And with that, that concludes my report. I'm available if you have any questions.
Any questions? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Council.
Yes, sir, please state your name.
Good evening, Council. David Singer, 1000 West Cass Street, Tampa 33606. Come before you tonight to endorse the magistrate's finding and the city staff's finding. And I will not belabor you tonight with a long presentation. I will put up the site plan one more time, just so you can see it. And just to recap, the applicant owns all of this property already. We're moving the funeral home from one side of the site to the other side of the site. A year and 2 months ago, there was an issue about impacting wetlands. They impacted too many wetlands. We changed it. We worked with your city staff. We worked with the EPC.
And now we will mitigate the very little impact that we will have. Also, we will not be removing the grand tree that was on the site. There's no parking waiver. The only waiver that we're looking for is to be able to access the site here on 46th for a couple of reasons. One, for cemetery visitation, and two, for emergency vehicles. I'm here to answer any questions you might have about this site plan. I would hope you approve the recommendation from the flood posture and the site plan tonight, and we would see you again for second reading in a couple weeks.
So, just to be clear, the EPC did not, you didn't have approval when you last came here, but now you do.
Correct. We did not have approval or denial. They hadn't taken a full enough look at
But you
it.
have approval now.
Now we have EPC approval.
Okay,
correct.
I think that's what I heard earlier. Thank you very much. Councilman Miranda, I saw your mic up
I
first.
just want
and
to,
then-
a thought occurred to me, and maybe it's not even relevant to the case, but the city had to inherit a couple of cemeteries here lately, in the last 5 or 10 years. What guarantee do we have on a perpetual, something that you have to have a fund that you perpetuate to make sure that this is maintained for years to come?
I think you're right. I think there is something
Yeah, I
that
don't
is
know
in the
what it is,
code.
but
I
I
don't.
remember, I learned that from just being here with the council members, listening to what we had to do to make sure that the good Lord took care of the ones that are buried. And in that case, it had to be the citizens of the city of Tampa. And what guarantees do we have that that won't happen here?
I really can't speak to what the code does or does not require in terms of the fund, in terms
And
of.
I'm only asking.
Yeah, in terms of the site plan, I can tell you SCI, the applicant, is a national company that does this all over the country and has never had a problem in Tampa with maintenance or upkeep of any kind, but I can assure you they will comply with whatever they're required to comply with moving forward.
Councilman Clinton.
So question.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Singer. There's Euclidean zoning that would permit this land use. Why are you coming to us with a PED and not a rezoning request?
I wish I could come to you with a Euclidean request, but unfortunately, we need that waiver to impact the local street, and that kicks us into this process.
So the only thing that staff,
Well, there's 4 waivers that are on it. The only one that was found inconsistent was this waiver, but when you have waivers, you gotta go through the PD process as opposed to Euclidean process.
or a Euclidean and then requests?
A Euclidean, we would have no waiver requests, and that's unfortunately not possible here.
And why isn't it possible?
Because we need that emergency access to 46th, along with the 4 other waivers listed on the site plan, which are using green space, more than 30% green space on the
Right.
site, because that's cemetery use. So we need that along with the other 3, which are in front of you. One is the ingress and egress on the non-residential lot from the local road, that's 46th Street.
Right.
One is the landscaped area, more than 30%, again, for cemetery use. One is the landscape buffer with the 6-foot masonry wall. The code requires a masonry wall. We're asking for a wood fence, same height. There was no objection to that from either the staff or the residents when we had our community meeting. And then reducing that wetland buffer and building the retaining wall instead of having the full 15-foot buffer.
So the masonry wall would have been, or the wood fence is along which perimeter?
Yeah, the wood fence is along the rear of the site and replaces the masonry wall. Same height.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Carlson.
I had the same question that Councilman Miranda had. Could somebody in legal maybe answer the question? As I recall, with one of the cemeteries that was thrown back at the city, the state has requirements of trust. I don't want to present evidence, but I think the state has some requirements, but the money we got only paid for 1 year of maintenance. I wonder if there's any, what other city or state laws regard that, and whether we're able to consider that in this. What restrictions are there around conversion of property to cemetery, and what protections are there for the public in the future?
Yes, sir. Thank you for the question. Unfortunately, I do not know the answer to that question. This particular cemetery my grandparents are buried there. It's been there for a very, very, very long time, and it's established. Normally, I will have to look into the answer on that one. I don't have the answer.
Yes.
And I would also just be concerned with the relevance of that matter in this matter of a rezoning. And the particular use is really not relevant to your decision in this case with regard to the criteria that you have to look at as to whether or not this is compatible for, and with regard specifically for the decision of that was mediated between the city and the applicant. So I would ask council, if you wish to have that information, certainly that's irrelevant for you from a public policy standpoint, but not in the posture that you are sitting
Well,
in tonight.
part of my question though was, are there any kind of special restrictions or requirements of the city that we have to consider when converting land to cemetery use? I guess the answer is no.
This land is already a cemetery use.
All of it is already. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, what we're looking at is they're moving their physical structure of the funeral home from one part of the property to the other. That's what this magistrate's recommendation is, so. Councilman Clendenin?
So I just want to make sure I'm clear and for council. The discussion here is about the magistrate's decision and the compromise on approving a PD. So really, we just have to go back as a council. It is still our burden to review the PD criteria to see if, based on our assessment, it fits the PD criteria, correct?
I would say so, in the sense that this is a different plan than what proposed the last time.
Right.
So.
And yes, and you're considering it in the context of the Fludra, the whole package, the mediation, the fact that we were challenged and that we came forth with this.
So if I hear you correctly, what I'm hearing is that the fact that this went through that Fludra, that this should weigh heavy on our soul as we're evaluating the criteria on whether this fits the PD criteria.
Whether this fits what you wanted us to bring you back in
Right.
December.
Okay, thank you.
All right. If there's nothing else, is there anybody in the public that wishes to speak on item number 2? Please state your name.
Good evening, Stephanie Pointer. Ms. Crosby Collier said that you can amend this, and I would suggest that we look again at Ms. Dock's pictures of 46th Street, and there's no reason why you can't put a sidewalk there. Yes, it's a little hill, but you know what? The city just put one on a little hill on Prescott down the street from me. It cost $32,000 for the city to put a small property, $29 a square foot. I'd gladly pay you the money to get out of paying for it. The second concern I have is a wooden fence. Okay, first of all, I think everybody knows what a wooden fence looks like in 5 years in Tampa. Second of all, how can people see what's going on in the cemetery if you have a wooden fence? So if somebody comes in and they start destroying headstones, grave markers, etc., you can't see them because somebody has a wooden fence. The city just spent a couple $100,000 putting a nice wrought iron fence around the cemetery. Why did they put wrought iron? Because they don't want it to be opaque, because they don't want the cemetery to be damaged. So those two amendments should certainly be made to this Fludra arrangement. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please state your name.
Hi, my name is Carolyn Bennett. I have a problem with the sidewalk too. I am starting to document problems where builders are not putting in sidewalks because there's a barrier, there's an obstacle, there's an obstruction, and the reach is unbelievable. I've seen 75-foot frontages that have a barrier that's 20 inches long and it's 20 feet from the road. We can't put in a sidewalk. There's a barrier. Let us pay $29 a linear foot. And that's what they do because there's a financial incentive, because it's a lot cheaper for them to do that than it is to put in a sidewalk. We've got to change the fee structure and take away the financial incentive to pay the in lieu of. Vic Bede, the last I heard from him, for the city to put in the sidewalk, it's over $100 a linear foot, well over $100 a linear foot. We need to take away this financial incentive, make them put in the sidewalk. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else that wishes to speak on item number 2? If not, rebuttal, sir? Please state your name
David
again.
Singer for the applicant. Again, I will be very brief, and I will put up the site plan so that you can see it. 2 points to make. First is when we're talking about the wooden fence or the masonry wall, Right here is where we're talking about. The residents behind it who live there actually were the ones that requested that as a barrier to the cemetery, and we complied. The code requires us to put it in anyway. They asked for a wooden fence. We're okay with it. The sidewalk issue, this is where we're talking about. This is 46th. This is the road through the cemetery here for people to, either emergency vehicles or people to come in and visit. The parking is here. So when you're talking about flow of the site, that's why this road is here. There's really no parking or opportunity to not create a dangerous situation for pedestrians here on 46th. We worked with city staff and came to the joint conclusion that a sidewalk was not feasible and we'd pay in lieu. So that was the justification there. With that, I conclude my presentation and request your approval.
Thank you very much. Anything else from council? If not, I'll ask for a motion to close.
So move.
Anything else? Councilman Vieira with the motion to close. Second from? Second from Councilmember Clendenin. All in favor? Councilmember Miranda, would you like to read this motion, item number 2?
I'm sorry if we can. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. The first one is a finding. Ms. Crosby Collier? The first one is a motion to accept, reject, or modify.
Yes, sir, that's correct. The first motion will be a motion to approve the special magistrate's recommendation and the revised application, to accept his recommendations in the revised application.
Is there a motion to that effect, sir, to accept, modify, or? Wait.
So which one is it? Motion to.
Would you like to make a
Well,
motion to accept?
I mean, I'm just listening to it. I don't know what the council wants. I mean, it's just, I don't have to read. We either have to approve, reject, or modify. And then you read the ordinance, I
Yes.
guess.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, two separate motions, though.
Well, I read, somebody else would read it.
Okay, who wishes to take this item? All right, go ahead, Councilmember Clendenin.
So I moved to accept the special magistrate's report and recommendation rezoning property in the general vicinity of 3602 North 50th Street and 3501 North 46th Street in the city of Tampa, Florida, and more particularly described in section 2 from zoning. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, period.
Councilman Clendenin has made a motion to accept the special magistrate's recommendation. Second is from Councilmember Vieira. Let's have a roll call vote.
Vieira,
Yes.
Miranda,
No?
Carlson, Hurtak,
No.
Clendenin,
Painfully,
Henderson,
yes.
Yes.
Maniscalco.
Yes.
Can we please do it again?
Go ahead.
Vieira,
Yes.
Miranda,
No?
Carlson,
Yes.
Hurtak,
No.
Clendenin,
Yes.
Maniscalco.
Yes.
Motion carried with Miranda, Hurtak, no, and Henderson absent.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Vieira, would you like to read the ordinance now for first reading? Item number 2.
Yes, sir. I read an ordinance being presented for first reading consideration. An ordinance approving a special magistrate's report and recommendation, rezoning property in the general vicinity of 3602 North 50th Street and 3501 North 46th Street in the city of Tampa, Florida, and more particularly described in section 2 from zoning district classification RM 16 residential multifamily to PD plan development, providing an effective date.
We have a motion from Councilmember Vieira. Do we have a second? Second from Councilmember Clendenin. Roll call vote.
Miranda,
No?
Carlson,
Yes.
Hurtak,
No.
Clendenin,
Yes.
Henderson, Vieira,
Yes.
Maniscalco.
Yes.
Motion carried with Miranda, Hurtak, no, and Henderson absent.
And second reading?
Second reading and adoption to be held on February 15th, 2024 at 9:30 a.m. located at Old City Hall, 315 East Kennedy Boulevard, 3rd floor, Tampa, Florida, 33602.
Thank you very much. Next up, item number 5.
Thank you, Council. LaShawn Dock, Development Coordination. Item number 5 is REZ 2358. This is for the property located at 3301 West Iowa Avenue. The applicant is represented by Steve McElhaney. The request is to rezone the property from RS60 Residential Single Family to RS50 Residential Single Family. And I'll turn it over to Emily to give her report, and I'll come back and give my report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, ma'am, go ahead, please state your name.
Emily Phelan, Planning Commission staff. The subject site is located within the South Tampa Planning District in the Inner Bay South of Gandy neighborhood. The site is located within a coastal planning area, specifically Evacuation Zone B. The subject site is located here, and it's surrounded by detached single-family residential uses to the north, south, east, and west. This is the adopted future land use map. The subject site is here. It is surrounded by the residential 10 future land use designation. Moving further east along South McDill is the CMU 35, and further north is the residential 20 with a multifamily. This portion of West Iowa Avenue between South Sheridan Road and South Sherwood Avenue is developed at 5.26 dwelling units per acre based on 10 sample sites. This area of the city can be considered underdeveloped. The request supports Land Use Policy 2.1.2, which seeks to use land resources more efficiently by encouraging infill development on underutilized sites. Planning Commission staff analyzed the lot widths along West Iowa Avenue. Lot widths range from approximately 50 feet to 100 feet. The request would encourage development that would be within the existing lot configuration of the neighborhood. This request supports many policies in the comprehensive plan as it relates to housing the city's population. The comprehensive plan encourages new housing on vacant and underutilized land to ensure an adequate supply of housing is available to meet the needs of Tampa's present and future populations. The request is also consistent with the compact city form strategy, which encourages infill development within proximity to transit and employment services. The subject site is within the coastal planning area and evacuation zone B, and as such, rezonings that increase the number of residential units shall mitigate any impacts on shelter space demands and ensure any impacts on shelter space demands are mitigated during the site plan review process. In conclusion, the request is comparable and compatible with the surrounding area. The request supports many policies that seek to maintain the stability of existing areas while expanding opportunities for housing choices. The request is consistent with a long-range development pattern encouraged under the residential 10 future land use designation. And that concludes my presentation. If you have any questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions? I see none. Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
Thank you again, Council. LaShawn Dock, Development Coordination. And Council, this rezoning request would allow the creation of 2 lots. So this would take 1 lot and allow it to be split into 2 lots. The site measures approximately 100 feet in frontage, which is on West Iowa Avenue, and 146 feet in depth. So each lot was originally platted at 50 feet in width and 139 feet in depth. The actual alley, which is north of the site, was vacated, and that's where they gained the additional 7 feet in the length on the site itself. So the applicant is requesting the RS50 zoning, and in the RS50 zoning, you need a minimum lot width of 50 feet and a minimum lot area of 5,000 square feet. And those standards have been included within the report provided. So this is the aerial of the site. This is the property which is identified here in red. Just to orient you on the map, so this is Iowa Avenue. This is Wisconsin. This is Sheridan Road. So this is the site which is located here, and you can see it has the RS60 zoning, and you can see some of the RS50 zonings that are located to the south, and I'll also show you the conforming map. And most of the residential uses which are located here. This is Inner Bay Boulevard, which is located here to the south of the site. So this is the conforming map, and I'd like to leave that up, please, while I read the analysis, which was provided within the report also. So on pages 3 and 4 of the staff report contain the analysis. So the area of analysis included 482 total zoning lots. 248 of those lots, or 51%, have been developed with a width of 59.99 feet or less. 19 are developed with a lot width between 55 feet and 59.99 feet. 158 lots are developed between 50 foot in width and 54 feet. 9 lots are developed in the range of 45 feet to 49 feet. 3 lots are developed at the range of 40 feet to 44 feet. 2 lots are developed at 35 feet to 39 feet, and 57 lots are developed between 0 to 34 feet. 234 lots, or 48%, have been developed with a width of 60 feet or greater, with 82 developed at 60 to 64 feet in width, and 25 lots developed in the range of 65 to 69 feet. 21 lots are developed in that range of 70 to 74 feet, and 33 lots have been developed at that range of 75 to 79 feet. 36 lots are developed at 80 to 99 feet, and 37 lots are developed at 100 feet or greater. So on the map, you can see that the blue identifies the lots that are 50 to 54. The lighter blue has the range of the 45 to 49 feet. When you get into your red, the red is at least 80 feet in width. And then that burgundy maroonish color is 100 feet or greater in width. So staff has identified that 86% of the lots in the subject block are developed at that width less than 59.99 feet, and 14% are developed at lot widths of 60 feet or greater. Staff finds the proposed request to be consistent with the existing development pattern of the overall study area. And I'd like to show you photos of the site and the surrounding area. This is the site. It's another zoom out view of the site to see more of the, it's a pretty wide width because currently it's at 100 feet in width, so it's hard to get the whole frontage in one shot. This is the side of that site, so this is the east end of the site on Sharon. This is another view of that side. This is across the street. This is north of the site. This is within the same block north of the site. This is across the street. So this is the view if you're looking west on Iowa. And then you can see the single-family homes, which are located here and here. And then I have a couple of pictures of those. And then this is directly west of the site. So this is directly adjacent, the single-family residential. So DRC staff reviewed the request and finds the request consistent. This concludes my report. I'm available if you have any questions.
Any questions from council? Nope, thank you very much.
Thank you, council.
Thank you. Applicant?
Good evening, Council. Steve Michelini, representing the petitioner, and I have been sworn. This proposal, by right, could build two structures. If they face the side street, if they face Sheridan, because it's 147 feet in depth. But to be consistent with what the neighborhood is developed in, the houses all face Iowa. And that brings us to you to request a rezoning to allow that to happen. As the staff has pointed out, the development pattern is consistent. It's 86% is in this direction. It's residential 10, which allows for consideration of the RS50 request. The development pattern is consistent with the entire area. I did interview with a few of the neighbors, and they were very happy to see this older home go away and that new homes be built. They didn't have any problem with the request, at least none that was communicated to me at the time. The staff has pointed out that this is an underutilized area. The Planning Commission has pointed out to you that they supported it, and we were consistent with all of the city reviews. When we went to the final conclusion of the Planning Commission, the request is compatible is comparable with the surrounding area. The request supports the policies that seek to maintain the stability of the existing areas while expanding opportunities for housing choices in single-family areas. Land use policies 9.5.1, 9.5.2, 9.5.3, 9.5.4, and furthermore, the request is consistent with the long-range development pattern encouraged in this residential area. Any mitigation that's required, this is a Euclidean zoning, so we cannot be asking for waivers on setbacks or anything like that. So we have to comply with that, and we will be doing that. So any mitigation that's required will be complying with the city staff and the permitting process. I'll be happy to answer any questions. The staff has found it consistent on every department, and we have been found consistent with the comprehensive plan as well. Again, the development pattern is consistent, and the purpose of this rezoning is to allow the development of the houses to face Iowa instead of Sheridan. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Councilman Clendenin.
Thank you, Mr. Michelini, for bringing us a Euclidean zoning request that fits in the character and the scale of the neighborhood. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Anybody else? Is there anybody in the public that wishes to speak on item number 5? Please come up and state your name. Thank you very much.
Good evening, council. My name is Nathan Hagan. Of course, I don't object to this, but I think it's worth mentioning. This is a lot split. Some lot splits are controversial, some are not. I want to call out the, I think, 2019 Equity and Non-Discrimination Plan by the Hillsborough County Planning Commission, and the documents associated with that, which demonstrate that Tampa's history, in particular, our adoption originally of our first Euclidean zoning plan, included the use of minimum lot size and restrictions on lot splits as a mechanism to economically segregate the city of Tampa. So I would ask you to take that into consideration for this item, but also for future items about lot splits in general and minimum lot size. And then as the comprehensive plan and land development code rewrites come up, I would ask you to reduce our minimum lot sizes citywide. I also would think you might consider adopting a process with a zoning hearing master to avoid having to hear by right rezonings like this, which really should not be controversial or politicized. So those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else wish to speak on item number 5? I see no one. Sir, do you need any rebuttal?
No, sir. I'd just like to point out that this far exceeds the 5,000 square feet that would be required under the RS50 zoning district. And again, by right, you could build 2 houses facing the other street, but they want them to be consistent with the development pattern of the houses that are already existing. So
Thank you very much. If there's nothing else, may I have a motion closed? Motion closed from Councilman Vieira, second from Councilman Miranda. All in favor? Aye. Councilmember Miranda, would you mind reading item number 5?
Item number 5, file number REZ 23-58. An ordinance being presented for first reading consideration. An ordinance rezoning property in general vicinity of 3301 West Iowa Avenue in the city of Tampa, Florida, more particularly described in section 1 from zoning district classification RS60 single residential single family to RS50 residential single family, providing an effective date.
We have a motion from Councilmember Miranda. We have a second from Councilmember Vieira. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Mr. Shelby, do we have to do a roll call vote on a first reading?
Not necessarily, no.
Okay. All
Thank
in
you,
favor?
council.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously with Henderson being absent. Yeah.
If we could just give a little
Yeah,
forbearance.
just say it now.
Motion carried unanimously with Henderson being absent. Second reading and adoption will be held February 15th at 9:30 a.m. located at Old City Hall, 315 East Kennedy Boulevard, 3rd floor, Tampa, Florida, 33602.
Thank you very much. Item number 6.
St. Thomas Development Coordination, agenda item number 6 is REZ 2366, a request to rezone 4904 West Paul Avenue and folio number 1319140000 from commercial intensive to planned development for residential single-family attached. I'll turn it over to Emily with the Planning Commission.
Thank you very much. Yes, ma'am. Please state your name.
Emily Phelan, Planning Commission staff. The subject site is located within the South Tampa Planning District in the Gandy Sun Bay South neighborhood. It is within the coastal high hazard area and evacuation zone A. The subject site is here, and the surrounding area is predominantly residential in character with multifamily to the east, to the west, and also to the north. And to the east and south are commercial intensive parcels. They're zoned that way, but not currently developed. This is a map of the future land use. It is surrounded by the urban mixed-use 60 designation, and further to the east, with the pink, is community mixed-use 35. The UMU 60 designation supports a mixture of uses and up to a 3.25 FAR, or 60 dwelling units per acre. The planned development proposes 10 units at 19 dwelling units per acre, which is significantly lower than the density planned for in the area, but consistent with the density anticipated under the urban mixed-use 60 designation. Due to the site interfacing townhomes to the north and the east, Planning Commission staff finds the request comparable and compatible with the surrounding area. The subject site is within a mixed-use corridor, and though the site is subject to the mixed-use centers and corridor policies provided in the comprehensive plan, specific site challenges make it difficult to address these policies. There is an existing stormwater ditch that runs along the right-of-way along West Paul Avenue. The ditch would make it impractical to provide sidewalks adjacent to the site along West Paul Avenue. The applicant is electing to pay the fee in lieu at the time of permitting per Transportation Note number 3. Since a sidewalk is not proposed along West Paul Avenue, the applicant is not able to address all mixed-use centers and corridor policies, such as providing pedestrian connections from internal units to a neighborhood sidewalk and streets. The proposed PD orients units 1 through 5 towards West Paul Avenue and provides an internal pathway along the southern portion of the site to units 6 through 10. The request supports many policies in the comprehensive plan as it relates to housing the city's population. The comprehensive plan encourages new housing on vacant and underutilized land to ensure an adequate housing supply is available to meet the needs of Tampa's present and future populations. The request is also consistent with the compact city form strategy, which encourages infill development within proximity to transit and employment services. The subject site is within evacuation zone A, as stated earlier, and as such, rezonings that increase the number of residential units shall mitigate any impacts on shelter space demands and ensure any impacts on shelter space demands are mitigated during the site plan review process. Overall, the request is comparable and compatible with the surrounding area and is consistent with the long-range development pattern anticipated under the urban mixed-use 60 designation. And that concludes my presentation, if you have any questions.
Any questions? Nope. Thank you very much. Yes, sir?
St. Thomas Development Coordination. We'll start out with an aerial map of the subject site and the surrounding area. You can see the subject site right here in red off of West Paul Avenue. Directly north of the site, you have a commercial intensive lot, and then to the east of the site, you have a commercial intensive lot that's used for open storage. As you move northeast, you have single-family attached uses. Farther north, you have multifamily and office. You have Gandy Boulevard here, and then Southwest Shore Boulevard here. As you move east, you have some more commercial uses and multifamily along Southwest Shore Boulevard. As you move further east, it transitions into a single-family detached neighborhood. As you move to the west towards the bay, you have a PDA, which is the West Shore Marina development that some of you may be familiar with. It comprises of multifamily, single-family attached, and commercial uses. And then as you move further south, you can see some more of those multifamily uses there. Here is the site plan provided by the applicant. As Emily noted, the applicant is proposing 10 units, which is significantly less than the amount of units that can be considered on the subject site. Units 1 through 5 are oriented towards West Paul Avenue, And then units 6 through 10 are internally oriented. Let's see here. As Emily noted, I won't get into much of it, but it was found that sidewalks would possibly impractical here due to the deep stormwater ditches that surround the property. And when I show some pictures, you'll be able to see just kind of how deep of a grade change it is in that area. There are going to be, let's see here, 23 parking spaces are required and 23 are provided. You do have 3 surface parking lots for guests, or parking spots for guests, and then the rest of the parking is located in garages. And the max proposed building height of the parcel is 40 feet. And here are the elevations provided by the applicant. This is the townhomes on the northern portion of the lot. And these are the elevations for the townhomes on the southern portion of the lot. Okay, so this is on West Paul Avenue. So this is where the street starts to curve there. The subject site is right here. You can kind of see some of that ditch there along West Paul. Here's some of those townhomes that I mentioned earlier that are to the north of the subject site, and then that commercial intensive lot right there. And you can kind of see in the distance some of the townhomes that are part of the West Shore Marina District. Oh, I got it all zoomed in, I'm sorry. Thank you, LaShawn. So this is to the east of the subject site. That's a commercial intensive lot that I pointed out on the aerial. It's currently used for open storage. This is moving west down Paul Avenue, so this is the subject site looking south. This is looking south at the subject site here. And this is looking west. This is the West Shore Marina area with their single family attached. You can kind of see some of the grade change here starting along Paul Avenue and how it dips down. And now you can really see how much it dips down, how the building is sunken below the curb. And then you have this guardrail here, and you can see the elevation change right here, how it drops off. And then this is looking south. You can see some more of the multifamily in the distance. This one, I think, kind of best shows the grade change. When you're standing there, the roof almost looks level with the road. And you can see that the trees are sunken down along with this sign. So I think that really clearly shows how big of a grade change is and why it was seemed unfeasible to provide sidewalks along Paul Avenue. This is moving on along the curb. This is the vacant site south of the subject site that's very heavily wooded, but it is zoned commercial intensive for commercial intensive uses. And then you can see some of the multifamily in the distance. This vacant land here is also zoned commercial intensive. I believe it's currently used for a dog daycare. And those are all the photos. Here is a site plan again. And then Emily did mention that they do have some pedestrian connections. And you can see those here so that the people who occupy the units could at least follow this to the drive aisle and then get connected to Paul Avenue, since there couldn't be sidewalks provided along Paul Avenue due to those stormwater ditches. Development and Coordination and Compliance staff reviewed the application and do find the application or the request to be inconsistent with the Land Development Code. Please see the findings from Natural Resources related to the buffer waiver requested. Notwithstanding staff's finding of inconsistency, if council approves the application, the modifications to the site plan as shown submitted on the revision sheet must be completed between the first and second reading. These revisions will not resolve the issue of staff's finding of inconsistency. I'm available for any questions.
Any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Actually, I have some questions for Natural Resources.
Okay.
Can you speak to your objections?
Okay, yep, Aaron Mayer, Development Coordination. So the reason that I objected, because the uses to the east and to the south are actually commercial uses. So by code, they're required a 15-foot use-to-use landscape buffer with 6-foot tall masonry wall. And they are providing, I believe, a fence. They're providing 3 foot to the east and 4 foot to the south landscape buffer. And the other objection was just the fact that the amount of trees that they're required to have on site can't be fit on site. So that's why I found it inconsistent.
Thank you.
Councilman Clendenin?
So I keep hearing about, impractical and, that they can't do it. But isn't it true that it's only impractical or because of what their proposed development is on this property? It's possible to develop this property and still be able to, fit within the code and meet these requirements, i.e. sidewalk and buffers and forward-facing doors. And I mean, it's just because they're trying to squeeze an awful lot of units on a really tiny piece of property that makes this impractical.
From my understanding from transportation and stormwater is that the sidewalks were impractical because of the stormwater area, and I believe.
But they could have further setback and have more room if the buildings weren't proposed to be right up against the furthest extreme, correct?
Correct. I would say though that as a staff member reviewing that, I would have encouraged the applicant to move the buildings closer to the street though, to provide that more walkable that more urban feel.
But
so you're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place.
But it's not an urban feel without sidewalks.
I agree.
And the other adjacent townhomes that you identified, they had street forward-facing doors and street egress and all, correct?
Yes, sir.
So that's the character of that neighborhood, is the cityscape.
There is, I will say that not all of them are facing the exterior. The ones that I showed you the picture of would be these ones right here. So their front ones face the sidewalk and have the exterior doors, same here. But some of them are interior, at least on this development here. But it appears from this one to the west that almost all of them do face exterior, except for probably with the exception of this one right here.
Okay. It looks to me like we're just trying to squeeze too much on too little again. Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Anybody else? If not, we'll go to the applicant. Yes, sir.
Good evening, Steve Michelini. I've been sworn and I'm representing the petitioner. Let's start with the land use designation for squeezing properties into a smaller space. This is a fairly large site, and the land use designation is urban mixed use 60, and we're developing at less than a third of that. We're asking for 10 units when you could, by right, build 22 units. So a couple of the things that we listened to when the council had this discussion back in December regarding how can you mitigate regarding internally facing units and how do you deal with that. And I'm going to go through a little checklist of things that we addressed that council specifically talked about. Let me get to that page. You talked about reducing density, you talked about not overbuilding, you talked about facing the streets. Now, all of these units have doorways that face the street. They don't, the only ones that don't is the second building in the back. And let me show you what we're talking about here. This is the existing, this is the existing site. It's currently zoned CI, which is commercial intensive, which would allow for a far more intensive type of development. It has a 3.25 FAR, which would allow, potentially you could have a high-rise building there, but that's not compatible with the development pattern here. These are townhouses and 3 stories. And I'm going to show you what the fronts of these look like facing the street. And you also asked for the drive aisles to be somewhere between 23 and 25 feet in width. The drive aisles that we're proposing are 24 feet in width. Now, we couldn't solve the problem of the ditch. You would have to petition for the city to give you an easement across the ditch, and then you would have to have some kind of a connection around this corner, which is extremely dangerous. So we didn't want to put pedestrians in that section. This is a close-up view of what's there. It's an existing warehouse that will be demolished. We don't have a problem with green space. Typically, if you were to develop another development here with the CI zoning, you wouldn't be required to have the buffer at all. So we're seeking the relief from that buffer simply because it's a residential project instead of a commercial project. This is the view looking down to the east. And you see that on their side, they don't have a 4-foot wide ditch that they're dealing with. I mean, sorry, a 4-foot deep ditch. This is the structure that's to be demolished. This is what we're proposing to do. You see they have the ditch here, and then they have the sidewalk behind, and that sidewalk collects the front doors of each of those units, and that's exactly what we're proposing to do. So we're not ignoring that element of the code. We're simply making it work so that we don't have to deal with the depth of that ditch, and we're taking them away from this very dangerous corner down here. This is what's directly across the street. Those are 3-story townhouses. They didn't have to deal with the ditch. The ditch is on our side. So the connectivity for these units is in the front, and then the development behind them, those units don't have front connections. We talk about the minimization of the density. You're allowed to go 60 units to the acre. We have less than that. And the Planning Commission staff pointed that out. We don't have blank walls. We have fenestration. We have architectural features in the front. This is the site plan, and it clearly shows you the doorways on each of the front with a collection sidewalk there behind the ditch. The end units here face the other part of Paul that turns around. The units that don't have it, that have an internal connection, are these units here, and they collect with the single sidewalk. You all asked for an increase in green space and making sure that was protected. There was even some discussion about eliminating the need for visitor parking. But even with those visitor parking spaces here, we still meet that requirement. The other element that we were talking about was, that we have a driveway that connects from Paul to Paul. So it's internal to the site. It doesn't ignore the fact that you have some other issues there to deal with, but we've tried to maximize that. Giving you the 24 feet of width on the drive aisle would not allow us to have a second building here, simply because then the buffer that we're asking for to go to 3 feet would be reduced even more. And again, that buffer is required for commercial properties. If it weren't a commercial property, we would have no buffer. It would be a residential. And then we're asking for relief on the type of fence and separation that's provided there. If you go back through the Planning Commission findings, they did find it consistent, and we're meeting everything except for the technical standards that the staff pointed out from Natural Resources. And the Planning Commission pointed out in their report that 10 family units in a mixed-use UMU 60 designation is reasonable. And remember, it's a mixed-use corridor. It's surrounded by either commercial intensive or multifamily uses. We're not introducing a new use here, and we're not trying to squeeze something in that would adversely impact a residential property. That was one of the other issues that you all talked about, was allowing and promoting townhouses in mixed-use corridors, not along residential streets. This isn't one of them. The staff is the one who pointed out that they didn't want a sidewalk on Paul. That wasn't something that we had proposed. So we came up with a solution of putting the sidewalk behind the ditch, collecting the front doors, which all still face the front, and then taking that down to the end where it could, in fact, connect to something else. So we've tried to mitigate anything that would be adversely affected by this project. When the staff went on and talked about the type, and again, the type of uses, 22 units are allowed by my math. I mean, check it with staff if you like. But at 60 units to the acre, we would allow be allowed 22 units by right, and we're proposing 10. So, and that's at 19 units per, that's at 19 units per acre as a development proposal. I'll be happy to answer any questions. I think
Councilmember
that
Hurtak?
Yes, thank you. You can leave that one up. What's the average square footage of each of these units?
I don't know.
Does staff know?
Yeah, this one's probably easier to read.
If his young eyes can't read it, I know I can.
Yeah.
The total building footprint, but I don't think you have the total square. You have the total footprint, but not the total square footage.
And just divide by 10 when you come up with it.
Yeah.
But that's not gonna give you the number.
Yeah, it's not gonna give you the
Height.
number. How much?
The footprint. It's about, it's a little over 1,100 square feet footprint.
But overall, they're 3-story, right? So what's the
Yeah.
total?
So it's, I'm guessing now, I don't know for sure, but I'm guessing it's about 3,000 square feet.
3,000 square feet,
I'm
okay.
guessing.
And that's sort of my question. So these are 3,000 square foot units, and you're saying you're producing fewer units. I would prefer to see a project with more units with less square footage. I think that you talk about the density you could be having, I think you ought to go there. I'm struggling with the doors to the back. Again, that's just not useful, there's no point to that. And then the fact that we're not adding the green space and the trees is a concern for me. And I just don't know why we're using the fact that it's not dense as a selling point, because to me, that's the opposite of a selling point. We need more housing, and we don't need 3,000 square foot homes, we need more housing. So for me, it seems that if you just cut the size in half, you could fit those 20.
Well, the issue, we are meeting green space. We're not asking for a waiver of green space. It's the distance on a buffer that's being requested to be reduced. We still meet all of the green space requirements. And in terms of meeting the trees, we're increasing the size of the trees to meet the number of trees required to be planted.
But you're not able to do that in the buffer area, and that's the concern. Ms. Mayor,
No.
is that not correct?
Aaron Mayor, Development Coordination, yeah, that is true. The code requires type 1 or type 2 trees in a 15-foot use-to-use landscape buffer. And 3 to 4 feet is not enough room to plant a 4-inch caliper tree.
Yeah, thank you.
So I mean, our point would be, why would you buffer between a residential unit and a commercial unit with a tree? I mean, it would be more appropriate to have the fence instead of putting the trees in those locations. We have other areas that they will be compatible with and appropriate to be placed.
Thank you very much.
So, I mean, we're trying to copy, the type of development that's already existing in the area. And these units are exactly what addresses the same problem with the ditch. They address the same problem with the sidewalk that's behind the ditch. It collects people and it keeps them out of harm's way.
Thank you very much. Yes?
Was there ever any discussion with these type of construction projects of mitigating these open ditches for?
I'm sorry?
Is there discussion when you develop this type of a project of mitigating these open ditches to?
Well, it's in the city. I don't know how you would mitigate the ditch. I guess you could petition to fill it in, but then you diminish the percolation capacity of the
water.
ditch.
Yeah.
And I don't know where this, I'm
I just didn't know
assuming,
if anybody had asked to.
no one's asked us about that, but, I mean, where would the sidewalk go? I mean, if you filled in the ditch or you put in with reinforced concrete pipe and you covered it over, it would still take you into a dangerous corner. I mean, you can ask transportation, would you want to have people walk into that corner with the guardrail and all of that? I don't think so.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir?
Jonathan Scott Mobility. In this particular case, there's a large ditch and it's a big stormwater facility down there. It was very impractical. If you look at like the street view, you can see it's a big drop off and there's all kinds of stormwater structures around there. It was just totally impossible, let's say.
Thank you very much. Yes, ma'am, were you gonna come up?
Emily Phelan, Planning Commission staff. I just needed to make a slight correction to the record. The site by right is allowed to have 25 dwelling units, and I believe the applicant stated 22. I just needed to correct that.
Sorry for my mismath.
You said by right 25 and the applicant has 22, correct?
No, we're asking for 10.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry,
Yeah, he stated 22, so I just needed to correct that.
No, my bad math. So, as I said, if you recall the discussions that were held here in December about how to make these things more compatible, how to make them fit, how to get as close as you can toward making them meet the code, I think that we've done an admirable job in trying to get there. So anyway, we're
Thank you. Yes, ma'am?
I apologize. Kate Wells, Legal Department. I just want to clarify a couple things for the record. There's been some discussion of how else this site could be developed. The question tonight is the proposed rezoning and how it does or does not comply with the comprehensive plan, the land development code. And any discussions, I got a little confused because I kept hearing about, we've talked about these types of developments and how to mitigate and what council has asked for. But until council approves an amendment to our land development code to address those types of issues, I caution applicants and council against using those informal discussions that have not resulted in any formal action by council or an amendment to our land development code to use that as guidance in considering the application before you. This goes back to what are the standards for plan development in our land development code, how this application does or does not comply with those standards, and then the compatibility with the comprehensive plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, is there anybody in the public that wishes to speak on item number 6? Please come on up and state your name. Everybody's been sworn in. Let's come in.
Good evening, Council. Sandra de Diego Sanchez. I had not planned to speak tonight. I came to my time, but this caught my attention, so I had to say something. I'm concerned of changing this, a couple things. Now, these are just notes. Commercial intensive is what South of Gandy has been wanting. They want to keep their commercial. They're trying to get businesses to move there because they want more employment in that area so that they could accommodate the people, it's easy for them to get to their jobs. That's one of the things. The other thing is this is in a high hazard zone. It's zoned AE. That ditch and that what they're talking about should send up a red flag almost immediately. Why, if the problem, part of the problem is the property, the ditch around it, and the things that they cannot do because they cannot comply with certain city ordinances because of that ditch, that's another red flag. Natural Resources is trying to tell you something. He can put 25 units on it, but are they going to flood? Are they going to be able to actually work in that area? We all know that city staff is presently working on some guidelines for this particular style. Those guidelines, and the applicant is well aware of them, the applicant has participated in them and given opinions. Until those guidelines come back to you for this particular aisle style, tunnel style, I think you should deny this until those guidelines are given to you so you can see if they really comply, because those are the guidelines that will be coming to you in the next couple of months. Again, these are more market value, there's no affordable housing in it. We go back to the same thing. We have staff is putting a housing report together that'll tell you if we actually need any more marketable housing, market price housing, as opposed to the affordable. We know we have lots of condos going up for $1 million condos. Also, the city found this inconsistent. There are inconsistencies throughout this plan. Please deny. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please state your name.
Good evening, my name is Nathan Hagan. I think an important question to ask here, which may not be germane to the vote, is what are the economic barriers presented by the Land Development Code which are preventing us from having a more dense thing? I think that what is germane to this vote is that it is almost 1/3 of what is allowed in terms of number of units. If our objective and the objective of the comprehensive plan is to maximize the number of units on the limited space that we have to build them in the city of Tampa, I think it behooves us to ask questions about why it's not economically viable, or why this developer, the client here, is not maximizing the number of units. That's, to me, seems like an essential question from a policy legislative point of view, especially leading into the comprehensive plan update. I don't know how that can factor into this decision, but ultimately we need more units here, and I hope we get something done. But 1/3 of density is really mind-boggling to me. Why somebody who's trying to maximize profit for themselves would build 1/3 of the number of units they're allowed to. That should throw off some alarm bells in your mind.
Yes, ma'am, next speaker, please.
Ms. Bennett has one name, Michael Fanning. Are you present? Thank you. One additional minute, 4 minutes, please.
Hi, my name is Carol Ann Bennett, lifelong resident of Tampa. Tampa needs to have a high standard for our development. We need to develop good projects that are smart. This is a mediocre, substandard project. That property needs to be redeveloped, no doubt about it. But this plan doesn't achieve any of the best goals that we should have. First place, we really need to protect our commercial property. Commercial property is disappearing at an alarming rate. It provides jobs, and in South Tampa in particular, it provides jobs that people do not evacuate from. They do not evacuate from their homes. Our commercial property is precious. We need to conserve it. The landscape buffer is 15 feet with a 6-foot masonry wall. Waivers. Mr. Michelini said, well, if there weren't commercial across the street, we wouldn't need it. Well, if my house was on the beach, I'd get a lot more money for it. But my house isn't on the beach, so I don't understand that. Yeah, if there wasn't commercial, maybe they wouldn't need that buffer, but there is, so they do. So I don't understand that as an argument. And the fact that they can't plant the trees they need to plant in the buffer because they're asking for it to be reduced to 3 feet and 4 feet is a big problem. I've read this staff report. It's full of all kinds of problems. The drive aisle. Have you looked at the site plan? I'm sure you have. Jonathan Scott testified on another hearing that if the garages are too small, you can't open the doors. You have to climb out the windows. These garages are too small. You're not going to get 2 cars in these garages. So what are they going to do? They're going to park on a street where there's no on-site street parking. You saw the pictures. You saw the guardrail. There's no place to park on the street, and they're not going to be able to fit into the garages. They can't make these turns. He's talking about sidewalks. They're paying into the sidewalk in lieu of fund. So they're obviously not building sidewalks. Ditches, I don't know anybody who likes having a ditch in their front yard. I think the ditches should be filled in. We should put in culverts. We should have better drainage. Ditches are not a good thing. And you can put sidewalks on top of ditches if you do that. The front doors are a problem. They don't face the street. I mean, is this safe? I mean, you're going to come out here where people are driving and they're trying to turn in here. You're going to walk your dog. You're going to pull your bike out here. If there's a ditch, they're not going to go out that door. This is a very bad plan. This tunnel design with this aisle design, this doesn't satisfy anything. It doesn't give us the commercial property we need. If you're gonna develop it residential, make micro units or whatever, it doesn't really give us density. It's not right for the area. It's just a very mediocre plan. One thing I thought was very interesting, I read the staff report from the Planning Commission, and this really boggled my mind. It says the specific site challenges make it difficult to address these policies, LU policies 6.1.2, 6.1.5, 6.1.13. There is an existing stormwater ditch that runs along the right-of-way. This ditch makes it impractical to provide sidewalks. So what they're basically saying is all these things cannot be addressed because the site is so bad. They're not able to address the mixed-use centers and corridors policies, such as providing pedestrian connections from internal units to sidewalk and street. It's in the coastal high hazard area. It's an evacuation zone A. The impervious surface is increasing 11,000 square feet. There's nothing about this plan that is good for this particular site. Anything else practically would be better.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please state your name.
Good evening, Stephanie Pointer. I am the president of the Gandy Civic Association. I do not answer the emails for the Gandy Civic Association, but I never heard from the applicant to meet with the neighborhoods. I'd like to start out by showing you this nice little neighborhood that I currently have a listing in. This is 25 feet wide. And actually, somebody asked me to go take a look at it, and I measured it with my trusty tape measure. And then I walked up and down the aisle, and I noticed there are 20 units in this little community, 20. And this is a foot wider than what Mr. McElhaney is proposing this evening. And half of the garage doors have significant door dings. Half of them. And it's a foot wider. So why are we making it narrower? I don't really know. But anyway, I'd also like to talk about this nifty little document that was produced by the Planning Commission in 2020. One of the most interesting things about this is that this document says that since, now this was in 2020, it says since 2004, there have been 60 plan amendment changes involving industrial land uses totaling 790 acres of land. There were only 2 changing to IG or industrial or commercial land. Everything else has been changed to residential. I would venture to guess that a huge chunk of these numbers is Rattlesnake Point, which is right around the corner. I was very disappointed to see that the city staff pointed out all the residential around it, but failed to point out all the commercial that was actually next to it. Over and over again, he did that. That's kind of disappointing to me. I would also like to point out that when LaShawn showed pictures of the street, or did you show the pictures of the street? Anyway, I'm sorry. But when they showed the pictures of the street, there were cars parked on the street. Why? Because there's another crappy development to the north where I've been by the site twice to look at it, and there were at least 5 cars from that development parked on the street. That's a problem. This is, of course, in the CHHA. Why is he asking for UMU 60? Because he can't ask for CMU 35 because he wouldn't be able to get far and he wouldn't be able to get enough stuff on it. Now, my buddy, Mr. Hagan here, you know, he's all for more housing. These are not affordable. These are going to be $750,000 to $1 million properties. That's what everything around them has sold like. There's still commercial necessary. This is still south of Gandy. People don't evacuate from what's on there now. This can still be sold as a commercial property. There's no reason why it has to be residential, except for somebody wants to build it and make a bunch of money. South Tampa's full.
Thank you
Remember
very much.
that, please.
Is there anybody else that wishes to speak on item number 6? No? Yes, ma'am?
I would like to meet Emily Phelan, Planning Commission staff. I would like to clarify a statement that was made in public comment. The site is currently UMU 60. This is not a comprehensive plan map amendment. The site is already designated UMU 60, so they're not asking for anything outside of what their future land use designation currently allows.
Thank you very much. Sir, would you like to have rebuttal?
Yeah, first, I'd like to have the Transportation Department comment about the dimensions of the drive aisle and their usability. I mean, they're not in transportation engineers, and when they get up and they say they're not functional, they meet the code. The proposal that we have in front of you meets the code. Whether or not CI is a long-term goal of the city to eliminate and turn into housing or not, again, the Planning Commission found us to be consistent. So we didn't ask for a land use change. We're asking for a townhouse project that goes toward meeting all of the codes. The only objection that we had was the buffer waiver from natural resources. We didn't have any from the other departments. We didn't have them from transportation. We didn't have them from zoning, except to back up what natural resources said. The fact that we have connectivity, we have the doors facing Paul. They don't. There's only 4 units that don't face Paul, that don't have a front door that faces the right of way. Only 4, and they're in the back. I'll be happy to show you again on the site plan that let me pull that out there. Front door facing Paul, front door, all of those on the front. They have an opening and they look like I showed you on that picture. They all front that way. This one has the doorway on this side facing Paul. The ones that don't is this one, 1, 2, 3, 4. And they're connected with a sidewalk that runs along the outside here.
There is no door facing Paul. They're both facing.
They do face
For Unit
Paul.
10. For
They do.
Unit 10.
That door should show there.
Yeah, but it doesn't.
No. But anyway, there aren't there was a comment about the sidewalks being in the drive aisle. They're not in the drive aisle, they're back here. And that's where the landscape buffer is too. Anyway, so all of those units face Paul, and they all have front doors, and they all have a sidewalk that connects them back to the right-of-way. They've taken them away from this corner. When we talk to Transportation Board, they don't want anybody along this side because it's dangerous. That's what that guardrail was for. So anyway, the site plans need to be corrected. I'll be happy to correct them, but that doorway should have been drawn on the side. And as I showed you, there's no blank walls. We asked for and we talked about the windows, we talked about architectural features. They all face the right-of-way. I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have. Let me go through very quickly the criteria for a PD. Prompts the efficient and sustainable use of land and infrastructure after carefully considering the potential adverse impacts. The applicant has requested the natural resources waiver, and we're saying that should be granted. If it were residential property, there wouldn't be that buffer requirement. Allow the integration of different land uses and densities. This is restricted to less than what was allowable by the maximum density. Encourage the flexible land development which reduces transportation needs and conserves energy. This certainly does that by restricting the number of units to 10. And we're also providing for the landscape, meeting the landscape that was required. Promote and encourage development sites where appropriate location, character, and compatibility. I showed you the aerials that showed that it was compatible with all of the surrounding developed areas. Promote the desirable living conditions. This is all in the staff report. Allowable Euclidean, if allowed by Euclidean zoning. Promote the architectural features. I showed you some that show the fenestrations that you've been talking about. Promote the retention and reuse of existing building stock. This is a CI warehouse that's being removed, or proposed to be removed. The waiver is in harmony with and serves the general intent, allows the waiver to result in substantial justice being done. Design, the proposed development is
Thank-
compatible, and the waiver does not substantially
Thank
interfere
you
with
very
others.
much, sir. Thank you. All right.
Ken, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
if I can, Mr. Michelini, there's a revision sheet aligned
We're
with
committing
the-
to the revision sheet.
Okay, and you'll be able to make the changes between first and second reading, is that correct?
Yes, if
Yes, sir.
Is it the pleasure of council to have the revision sheet for the waivers amended? Right now, the waiver is to request to allow the front doors of units 6 through 10 to be oriented towards the internal drive. That waiver would need to be amended between first and second reading to read units 6 through 9 if the intent is to move the door on unit 10 to face Paul Avenue.
the other ones face the sidewalk this way, they don't face the inside.
To the side yard, yeah, excuse me, to face the side yard. So it'd be to modify the waiver for units 6 through 9 to face the side yard, and unit 10 would then face Paul, but it would have to be stated on the record that that would be a request.
All right, sir. Yes, sir.
Is there a response to that? Mr. Michelini, is that your
That's correct.
desire to do that?
That's correct.
Okay.
All right. What's the pleasure of council? Any questions, comments? Or, oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry? We have a motion closed from Councilmember Vieira. We have a second from Councilmember Clendenin. All in favor? Aye. What's the pleasure of council? Yes, sir.
Yeah, this is a difficult one because I think that the applicant has been receptive to, obviously been listening to, other discussions on council when we discuss these issues and developments. I think the problem we have here is just this particular piece. I think if this project was on a different parcel, maybe I'd be more agreeable to it. Clearly, this parcel is kind of problematic because of the topography of it, with that significant drop off along Paul, with the stormwater ditch, and the type of development. I see that, obviously that we've lost the battle in this particular area as far as the type of land use. This is clearly, these parcels are being developed into residential units, so that doesn't weigh heavily on me. But the fact that it's in the coastal high hazard area, the fact that we have this open ditch, this large drop off that is preventing you from developing this property in accordance with our land use, with these doors facing the street, and being able to, with the connectivity with a true sidewalk, which would be connectivity, not just for the neighbors that are living there, but to be able to integrate with the other neighbors that would be, as we develop these neighborhoods. So that's kind of what that worries me about this. I am very pleased, again, I think you have listened to the past discussions about the design of these buildings, again, the relief that you provided, and some of the other considerations. But I just think that the parcel itself is problematic. It's just, again, trying to put, what may be a fine project somewhere else, but not on this particular piece of property.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Then I'll ask for, would anybody like to go ahead and read this? I believe I left off with Councilmember Hurtak. Would you like to read this item?
I'm gonna move to deny REZ 23-66 for the property located at 4904 West Paul Avenue in folio 131914.0000. Due to a failure of the applicant to meet its burden of proof to provide competent and substantial evidence that the development as conditioned and shown on the site plan is consistent with the comprehensive plan and city code, and the applicant's failure to meet its burden of proof with respect to requested waivers. I also adopt the findings and reasonings of the city staff report, specifically on natural resources. I also find that failure to comply with applicable goals, objectives, and policy in the comprehensive plan, such as failure to comply with Land Development Code Section 27-136, purpose of site plan controlled district. Although the proposed use is an appropriate transitional use within the neighborhood, the proposed design as shown on the site plan does not promote or encourage development that is appropriate. For example, only 5 of 10 units provide a front door, or 4 of 10 units provide 6 of 10 units provide a front door orientation toward the right-of-way, and the requested reduction in use-to-use landscape buffer will not accommodate the type 1 or 2 buffer trees required by code. The need or desire for waivers, the also failure to comply with with city land development, section 27-139, subsection 4, including the need or desire for waivers necessarily supports the fact that the proposed density and development is not appropriate for the site and does not comply with the land development code. And mainly, when you're talking about the fact that you are producing less density but can't fit it into the city code, that's the concern. For me, at least, I expect to see more density in a situation like this. I don't see why we can't, for the lack of density, can't fit in what needs to be fit in. And that's that you need a waiver for such low density. So that's my.
Is there a second? Second from Councilmember Clendenin. Any other discussion? If not, I'll ask for a roll call vote.
Hurtak,
Yes.
Clendenin,
Yes.
Henderson, Vieira,
Yes.
Miranda,
Yes.
Carlson, Maniscalco.
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously with Henderson absent to deny.
Thank you.
Okay,
We're moving on to number 8.
Okay. Sam Thomas, Development Coordination. Agenda item number 8 is REZ 2388, a request to rezone 203 South Moody Avenue from residential office 1 to planned development for residential multifamily townhomes. I'll turn it over to Emily with the Planning Commission.
Emily Phelan, Planning Commission staff. The subject site is located within the Central Tampa Planning District and the South Howard neighborhood. The site is located within the coastal planning area, specifically Evacuation Zone C. This is an aerial of the subject site. It's located right here. There is some commercial uses along Cleveland Street, but as you move south and even further west, there are there are residential uses. This is the map of the adopted future land use. The subject site is right here. It's represented by the residential 35 designation, which does surround the site on the north, east, and south side. And this pink color right here is a community mixed use 35 designation, and further, this purple color is the urban mixed use 60. This portion of South Moody Avenue between West Cleveland Avenue and West Platt Street is developed at an average density of 16.33 dwelling units per acre based on 19 sample sites. The PD proposes 26.14 dwelling units per acre, which is consistent with the density anticipated under the residential 35 designation. Given the presence of single-family attached use to the north, Planning Commission staff has determined that the request is comparable and compatible with the surrounding area. The request will allow for compatible infill development in an area planned for 35 dwelling units per acre. The comprehensive plan encourages attached single-family uses to be designed to include the orientation of the front doors to a neighborhood sidewalk or street. The entrances to units 1 and 2 are oriented toward and connect to the sidewalk adjacent to South Moody Avenue. Pathways from the entrances of units 3 and 4 connect to the sidewalk along South Moody Avenue, meeting the intent of Land Use Policy 4.3.6. A sidewalk is proposed along South Moody Avenue, which they connect to. The request supports many policies in the comprehensive plan as it relates to housing the city's population. The comprehensive plan encourages new housing on vacant and underutilized land to ensure an adequate housing supply is available to meet the needs of Tampa's present and future populations. The request is also consistent with the compact city form strategy, which encourages infill development within the proximity to transit and employment services. The subject site is located within the coastal planning area, specifically evacuation zone C, and rezonings that increase the number of residential units shall mitigate any impacts on shelter space demands and ensure those impacts are mitigated during the site plan review process. The request is comparable and compatible with the surrounding area and consistent with the density anticipated under the residential 35 future land use designation. And that concludes my presentation, if there are any questions.
Any questions? Thank you.
St. Thomas Development Coordination. We'll start out with our aerial map. So you can see the subject site here along South Moody Avenue, outlined in red. It's just south of West Cleveland and north of Platt Street. This portion of South Moody Avenue is completely developed with either single-family attached or multifamily uses. Then along the northern portion along Cleveland, you do have two office developments. As you move farther down Moody, this PD at the corner of West Platt Street and Moody may be familiar to some of you. It was approved, I believe, in 2022 for 12 multifamily units. As you move farther south, you have the Publix here. Then one block to the east, you have the South Howard Avenue corridor with a mixture of commercial and residential uses. So arguably this area is one of the more walkable and dense areas of the city. Here is the site plan provided by the applicant. The applicant is proposing 4 units. The front doors for units 2 and 3 are oriented towards the northern property line, and the units for 1 and 4 are oriented to the southern property line. Pedestrian connections are provided along the perimeter of the property on the north and south that connect to South Moody Avenue. They also connect to the alley in the back. The max building height proposed here is 45 feet. 9 parking spaces are required and 10 are being provided. Alley access is being used to rear load the units 3 and 4, and then there's driveways in the front for units 1 and 2. Additionally, there is a 6-foot PVC privacy fence proposed to the north and a 6-foot PVC privacy fence to the south. This to the south is a parking lot that is used to serve the Montessori school that's over to the west, and this is an office building to the north. Here are the elevations proposed, or the elevations provided by the applicant. So this is looking just south of the subject site on Moody. This is the parking lot that I was referring to south of the subject site. You can see the Montessori school sign there. As we're moving north on Moody Avenue, here's the subject site here. There's the parking lot that I was referring to. And the subject site, we're looking southwest from Moody Avenue. This is looking west on Moody Avenue, directly at the subject site. This is looking southeast on Moody Avenue towards Platt Street. You can see single-family attached, semi-detached here, and then you can see the multifamily, older multifamily building there. This is north of the subject site where Cleveland and South Moody meet. This is an office. And then this is continuing north towards the intersection of Cleveland and Moody. And you can see some of those commercial uses along West Cleveland Street. Here is a site plan again. Development Coordination and Compliance staff reviewed the application and find the request to be inconsistent with the Land Development Code. See findings from Natural Resources related to the waivers requested for the landscape buffer reduction and the reduced green space. Notwithstanding staff's finding of inconsistency, if City Council approves the application, modifications to the site plan as shown on the submitted revision sheet must be completed between first and second reading. These revisions will not resolve the issues of staff's inconsistency findings. I'm available for any questions.
Any questions? Councilwoman Hurtak.
Thank you. Again, if Ms. Mayor could come and talk about the natural resources waivers.
Okay, thanks. Okay, Aaron Mayor Development Coordination. Yes, they're requesting a green space waiver for the multifamily green space. They're required to have 1,400 square feet total for the 4 units. And including the VUA green space, they're providing 719 square feet. So they're providing less than half of what's required by code. And then the code also requires 15-foot use-to-use landscape buffers between a parking lot to the south and an office to the north. And they're requesting 0. The applicant may discuss with you about flipping this lawn strip with the sidewalk at the time of permitting, if it's approved, to allow like a greater, more, it'll be less of a waiver, but they're still requesting the full waiver now. But they could potentially do that at a later time. However, yes, it's a 0-foot use-to-use landscape buffer and the code requires 15. And the lawn strips they're providing are 2.5 feet wide, which is very narrow. And while the site doesn't have a lot of trees on it, many of the trees are exempt species and don't require replacement trees. The code does require 5 trees by code, and 2.5 feet is a narrow strip to plant any trees in.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Nope. Thank you very much, sir.
Grab my site plan, and then I'll turn it over to the applicant.
All right. Yes, sir. Please state your name.
Steve McElhaney, I've been sworn. Council, we have some site plan changes that need to be made in consideration, and we respectfully request that be continued so that we can make those changes, get back with the staff, and address the comments that have been sent out in the code and the report.
All right, we have a request for a continuance. Does anybody have any comments or questions? Mr. Shelby, should I ask for public comment on this continuance request? Yeah.
This is the first request.
Yeah, Rule 6J. States that no request for a continuance by the applicant petitioner shall be granted at a quasi-judicial public hearing after the applicant petitioner has completed its initial presentation unless determination by City Council that it is necessary for purposes of procedural due process.
So, he hasn't presented and he wants to make significant changes in general to the site plan, so.
I'm just saying that, I understand that, that's why I read the rule.
I move to approve the continuance request.
We have a motion from Councilmember Clendenin, second from Councilmember Hurtak. Do we need public comment? That was my initial question.
Don't load up the 21st.
Wait,
The next available date to continue to would be the April 11th public hearing at 5:01 PM.
So I move to continue to April 11th.
Okay, Mr. Shelby, should I take public comment?
What?
Because he hasn't presented anything.
No, he is not. And the question is, what is the public, he's representing, did you want to say something?
Kate Wells, Legal Department. Anytime there's a request for a continuance, City Council allows the public to comment on it, especially if they came here to speak to the item.
Okay.
That's typically done at the beginning of the agenda, when the agenda is finalized. And I don't know why that request wasn't made, frankly, at the beginning of the meeting. Thank you.
All right, anybody in the public wish to speak on the continuance only? This is a continuance to April 11th. First continuance request. I see no one, and I don't see anybody registered online. We have a motion from Councilmember Clendenin to continue this to April 11th, 5:01 PM, 315 East Kennedy Boulevard, 3rd floor, Tampa, Florida, 33602. Second from Councilmember Hurtak. All in favor of the continuance? Aye. Any opposed?
Thank you.
April 11th. Thank you very much. Next in the last item of the night is item number 9. But before I begin, I saw quite a few new people come into the chambers. If you are here to speak on item number 9, please stand up. If you have not been sworn in, raise your right hand and we'll swear you in.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, ma'am, go ahead. Item number 9.
Thank you, Chairman and Council. LaShawn Dock, Development Coordination. Item number 9 is REZ 23-111. This is for the property located at 4001 West Corona Street. The applicant is represented by John LaRocca. This is a request to rezone the property from RS60 Residential Single Family to RS50 Residential Single Family. And I'll turn it over to Emily to give her report, and I'll come back and give my report. Thank you.
Very much. Yes, ma'am, go ahead. Please state your name.
Emily Phelan, Planning Commission staff. Before I begin my presentation, it was noticed that the future land use map was not attached to our report, so I would like to enter that into the record.
Thank you very much.
The subject site is located within the South Tampa Planning District in the Virginia Park neighborhood. It's located within the coastal planning area, specifically Evacuation Zone B. This is an aerial of the subject site located here. The surrounding area is characterized by single-family detached, and it surrounds the site. Further east to Southdale Maybury are commercial uses. The subject site is located here. It's represented by the residential 10 future land use designation, which does surround the site on all sides. This portion of West Corona Street between South Grady Avenue and South Clark Avenue, excluding the subject site, has an existing average density of 5.51 units per acre based on 16 sample sites. The existing density is 55% of the density anticipated under the residential 10 designation. The proposed rezoning will allow consideration of 2 single-family detached zoning lots at a density of 6.45 units per acre on the subject site. Due to the presence of single-family uses in the surrounding area and the proposed density, Planning Commission staff finds that the request will not alter the character of the surrounding area and is comparable and compatible with this portion of West Corona Street. Planning Commission staff has reviewed the application and found no adverse impacts to the surrounding neighborhood. The rezoning will allow for better utilization of the land that is consistent with the density anticipated under the residential 10 designation. The comprehensive plan also recognizes the importance of single-family neighborhoods and seeks to promote compatible redevelopment of neighborhoods to ensure economic health and that an adequate amount of land is planned for the city's growing population. The subject site is also within proximity to transit in an area where the comprehensive plan specifically states that diverse housing opportunities should be provided. The subject site is located within coastal planning area and evacuation zone B, and as such, rezonings that increase the number of residential units shall mitigate any impacts on shelter space demands and ensure those impacts are met during the site plan review process. The proposed rezoning is comparable and compatible with the development pattern and is consistent with the long-range development plan pattern encouraged under the residential 10 future land use designation. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you again, Council. LaShawn Dock, Development Coordination. So this is REZ 23-111. And as mentioned earlier, so the request is to rezone the property to RS50. So the site currently measures approximately 113 feet in frontage, and this is on West Corona Street, and 120 feet in depth on Grady Avenue. I can put up the plat just to show you the plot. Just to zoom in a little. So these are the lots. This is block 45, and this is lots 23 and 24. And you can see the platted width of this lot is 52 feet, and then this lot is 61.5. The rest of the block is 50 feet, except for the lots that are on the end. And the lots were originally platted, as shown, mentioned, it's at 52 feet in width for lot 23, and then 61.5 feet in width, and that's for lot 24. The request is to split the lot, and this would create 2 lots. In an RS50 zone, the minimum lot width required is 50 feet of frontage, and 5,000 square feet of lot area is required for each lot, which is developed in that zone. So I have the aerial map to provide for you of the subject site. So this is the site located here on the corner. This is Corona Street, and this is Grady Avenue. And just for reference, this is Church Avenue that's located here. So you can see the RS-60 zoning surrounding the site. You have a couple of RS-50 zonings that are located to the south. And then north is RS-50, some of these PDs which have the RS-50 or the 50 feet in width development pattern. So next is the conforming map. So if we could leave this up while I read the analysis on the site. So this is the subject site that's identified here in the black hatched area on the corner of Corona and Grady. So the subject site was originally platted in 1925. It is a part of the Maryland Manor Second Unit, Lot 23 and 24, Block 45. So the area of analysis included 538 lots, with 161 or 30% of those lots having been developed with a width of 59.99 feet or less, and 377 or 70% having been developed with a width of 60 feet or greater. Pursuant to review of the surrounding area, 1 block east of the subject site, the block on West Corona Street between South Grady Avenue and South Church Avenue contains 17 total zoning lots, with 11 or 65% having been developed with a width of 60 feet or greater, and 6 or 35% having been developed at a width of 59.99 feet or less. In analyzing the block on West Corona Street from South Clark to South Grady Avenues contains 17 total zoning lots, and this includes the subject site, with 10 or 59% having been developed with a width of 60 feet or greater, and 7 or 41% having been developed at a width of 59.99 feet or less. On the north side, on the block face of West Corona Street, this is from South Clark Avenue to South Grady Avenue, contains 9 total zoning lots, including the subject site. 6 or 67% have been developed at a width of 59.99 feet or less, and 3 or 33% have been developed at a width of 60 feet or greater. Staff has identified that 30% of the lots in the study area, 41% of the subject block, 35% of the block east of the subject site, and on the staff report at the bottom of page 3, it states 33%, but it should be 67% of the block face or lot widths of 59.99 feet or less. And with that finding, staff finds the proposed request inconsistent with the existing development pattern of the overall study area. Also, in looking at this area, what I did was just took the numbers, because you can see the RS-50 zonings that exist within the area, which is pointed out on the aerial map, plus the PDs that are located within that area. Even taking out the RS-50 zonings and the PD zonings, that would leave a total of 514 zoning lots. 27% of those lots in that area, 41% on the block, 35% of the block east of the subject site, and 66% of the block face are at lot widths of 59.99 feet or less. So it still would come out to staff finding the request inconsistent with the development pattern. And I have pictures of the site and the surrounding properties. Just 1 second. So this is the view of the site. So this is the east end of the site as you approach the corner. This is across Grady. This is east of the site. It's currently under construction. This is south of the site at the southwest corner of Corona and Grady. This is another view across the street from the site, that same home. This is south of the site. And this is also south. And then we swing around, this is west of the subject site. And then that is also west of the subject site. The DRC staff reviewed the request. And as mentioned earlier, the finding is inconsistent.
Thank you very much.
And that concludes staff's presentation. I'm available if you have any questions.
Any questions? Nope, thank you very much.
Thank you, council.
Yes, sir, please state your name.
Good evening, I'm John LaRocca. Murphy LaRocca Consulting, 3225 South McDill Avenue, representing the applicant, Aram Galuzian, who also happens to be the owner, one of the owners of the property, and with the intentions to develop the property. So for the record, I want to state that the rezoning staff report had not made that correction, although the record is clear as to who the owners of the property are. As many of you know, you've seen me here for many years, I don't take these cases on lightly, especially in the matters of rezonings that have the potential of being controversial. I usually feel very strongly about what is consistent with the comp plan and what isn't. And there are a couple of things I want to address tonight to suggest why this council can find the request approvable. With that said, again, I always appreciate the detail prepared by both the development staff with the city and the planning commission. It's important to note that this area is designated residential 10 on the comprehensive plan. City of Tampa adopts goals, policies, and objectives in that comprehensive plan to address development long-term. We all know what these neighborhoods are like. Maryland Manor Unit Number 2, platted in 1925, with the majority of the lots in that original plat being 50 feet in width, approximately 120 feet in depth. Lots in excess of 5,000 square feet, in fact, in excess of 6,000 square feet. When you look at the report as a whole, this report, except for the consistency of the lot conformance, the proposal is consistent with the city's long-range plan, the residential 10 designation. The applicant is seeking a rezoning of the property from RS60 to RS50, simply to address the one particular lot that is part of the current folio parcel that has been owned under one ownership, but the combination of two platted lots of record. These two lots were not split in odd form. If you analyze, and I'm going to get to this point on the conformance map in a minute, if you analyze the lots that exist in that area based on the calculation of parcel counts by lot width, of course within that parcel a census that was made of the 538 lots, a number of them within the blocks in that neighborhood are lots that are less than 100 feet in width, which implies to me that some of the lots over the years have been developed or combined in those days when that area, many people purchased multiple lots that were platted, lots of record, and they created a configuration of lots that varied in width. What I think is important in the conformance map is that 133 of the parcel counts by lot width, and you can play with the numbers any way you want, but when you, for purposes of comparison, but lot widths between 50 and 54, the lot counts are 133 in the area. And I refer to that and compare it to the largest lots in the area by parcel count. There's 47 lots that are 100 feet or more, of which the applicant's parcel, the folio parcel of the two combined lots exist. I come to you this evening representing the applicant to recognize the existing lots of record. The applicant intends to develop Lot 24, as LaShawn Doc mentioned, on the platted nature. These are not lots that have been split in some odd configuration. One lot is the original plat, Lot 24, that is in excess of 60 feet. The actual lot is 7,380 square feet in excess of the 60 by 100 requirement. The interior lot, Lot 23, is 52 by 120, or 6,240 square feet in area. So that lot is 8 feet less than what the standard RS60 required width is. We're really talking about lot widths this evening. The block face in this particular instance, when you look at the characterization of that area, 6 of the lots, of the 12 lots within that block, are developed and owned that are less than 60 feet wide, or developed in that 52 foot wide dimension. So in this immediate area, what is being proposed by recognizing the two lots of record It is the applicant's intent, I realize we're doing a Euclidean standard zoning this evening, the intent is to develop each lot in accordance with the utilization of the standard developments for RS60, maintaining front yard compatibility. I realize we're not a PD plan, but that's the intent here, not to create anything that would be out of character, certainly within that immediate area and certainly the block face. The comprehensive land use plan and the recommendation by the Planning Commission, I couldn't have written it better. This plan is consistent and this proposal is consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the city's long-range plan. If you read the development services component of the recommendation, what makes this inconsistent based on the analyses that are done in cases like this is the calculation of the lots, but you've got to dig in and look at how each of these individual lots work. Some of these areas, a lot of the lots, for example, that are anything less than 100, owned that are less than 100 feet in width, as is my client or the applicants, many of those would not be appropriate for splitting because it's very hard to do that with regard to how they're owned and how they're configured in terms of their dimension. But those lots, for example, those that are more than 100 feet, and where they are when you look at it's the dark burnt red lots, those are lots that I think are quite justifiable in certain cases to allow them to be considered, to recognize how they were platted and how they fit into the conformance of the surrounding area. I respectfully, ask you to, look at the report in its entirety. I think the staff and the Planning Commission did a good job. There is, in my opinion, a question with regard to how that conformance map is looked at, and there are those cases and why you see some cases of RS50 and PD in the area, why there have been zonings as such granted. It was not our intent to seek a PD because we wanted to mess around with the development standards for this area. We want to create two lots that would be characteristic of the area and that upon construction and development would not look out of character in terms of that area and it would not be impactful to the intent of the Res 10 designation. The actual overall density, the area is developed at about 5.5 units to the acre as a whole. This proposal would take us to like 6.5 units to the acre. So in that case, I believe the application is approvable. I know there are people here this evening that will have their opinion. I will be glad to offer any other comment. The owner and one of the owners and the applicant is here this evening. If there's any specific question about what the intent is in terms of the home component, because he will be the builder or propose to build on those lots, and we're here to answer questions. Thank you very much.
Any questions? If not, you said the property owner, if they would like to come up and it be part of the presentation?
If necessary. I don't think the reality of it is that there are two single-family homes that are being built.
Okay.
They will be built in accordance with the RS60 setback standards.
Okay.
The homes are proposed to be approximately 3,000 square feet. As new homes are built in the South Tampa area in neighborhoods like this, what will be built will be compatible and not out of character with at least that immediate block face. If you start comparing it to other pockets, there's some blocks that have been actually developed where more than 50% of those blocks have been built on the 100 or the 85 or 90-foot wide lots, depending on how they were split. But we'll add if there's any specific way. I always advise to my clients, and I understand City Council always corrects me if we try to talk about details of the development when it's not a PD zoning. We're glad to answer questions and show you some concepts. We think it will be an attribute to the neighborhood. There are people that are very interested in this neighborhood for single-family detached homes of a caliber that is appropriate for that neighborhood.
Okay, and we always have rebuttals.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sir. All right, if there are no questions, I'll open it up for public comment. If you're here to speak on item number 9, please come up and state your name. You'll have 3 minutes unless you have a speaker waiver form. And then we have 3 individuals registered online.
I have some other things for them too.
You only have 1? Okay. Okay, we'll take them after the in-person. Okay, thank you very much.
Clerk.
I see four names, Jan Rice, Kelly McQueen, Joanne McNabb, and Barbara Wilcox. Barbara Wilcox, I thought.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Okay, that's,
Total of 7 minutes?
yes, thank you.
All right, you have a total of 7 minutes. Please start the clock at 7 minutes. Please state your name, sir, and go ahead.
My name is Thomas Conley. I'm the current Vice President of the Virginia Park Neighborhood Association, and I'm speaking in that capacity. Good evening, council members. I am speaking tonight in opposition to the petition to rezone 4001 West Corona Street from RS 60 to RS 50. The basis of my competent substantial evidence is found in the document Imagine 2040 Tampa Comprehensive Plan via numerous policies and the introduction that discusses, and you can see that there on the overhead. The document is implemented via the Tampa Muni Code, Chapter 27, specifically 2711, that mandates an analysis of historical precedent pattern of parcel configuration within 1,320 feet, 1/4 mile of the subject property. Only properties that are within the same zoning district may be considered in making the determination of compatibility. The plat of original lots that was established in January 1926, 98 years ago, has nothing to do with this analysis. It is the actual development of parcels, zoning lots, that must be evaluated for compatibility. This area of Virginia Park was designated as RS 60 in February 1987 via the Zoning Conformance Act that Tampa City Council passed 37 years ago. And prior to that, the R1A designation contained in Chapter 43 in 1956's code. The 60-foot frontage has been a requirement for well over 68 years. Development staff has reported that the majority of 73% of the precedent parcels are 60 feet or greater in this 1320-foot area of analysis. Therefore, in accordance with 2711, the creation of substandard lot size or setbacks will cause each new lot created from the original parcel to be a violation to this chapter. Council should also vote to deny the following policies from Imagine 2040. LU Policy 9.3.8. It is the intent of the city that new residential development projects shall be minimally disruptive to adjacent areas. To achieve this, the city shall assess the potential positive and negative impacts of residential development projects on the physical development pattern and the character of the surrounding area. Staff analysis of the existing parcel development shows 73% of RS 60 or greater. Allowing rezoning will negatively impact Virginia Park. Objective 9.4. Accommodate the greatest concentration of housing in desirable pedestrian-oriented urban areas having convenient access to regional transit with a mix of activity providing convenient access to a full range of activities, services, amenities, and opportunities for people to live within walking distance. Virginia Park is not a pedestrian-oriented urban area, and HART is not a viable solution. It's a failed one. LU Policy 9.41, encourage higher density multifamily development in pedestrian-oriented areas. Once again, Virginia Park is not a pedestrian-oriented urban area. Single-family areas, LU Objective 9.5, maintain the stability of the existing areas while expanding opportunities. Allowing this rezoning does not maintain the stability of Virginia Park neighborhood. 9.51, protect low-density, single-family areas that provide opportunities for home ownership attractive to households with children, residents that provide residents with privacy and open spaces. Allowing this to be split does not protect the low density in Virginia Park. Policy 9.5.2, maintain the character of single-family residential areas and discourage the demolition of single-family residents and displacements of residents in a way that encourages rehabilitation, providing opportunities throughout the city. The character of single-family area uses, development, and density. This does not maintain the character of Virginia Park as evidenced and explained in the staff report of the 1320-foot buffer area of the existing parcel development. LU Policy 9.5.3, provide for different intensities of single-family areas. By allowing this rezoning, that is not in the character of Virginia Park. You are not allowing different intensities. You're making them all the same, making them RS 50. LU Policy 9.5.4, utilize the single-family categories to 1, maintain the current density and character of existing family areas, meaning keep it RS 60. 2, protect areas of the lowest intensity of development that are currently in predominantly single-family residential use or have environmental or infrastructure constraints that were noted in the Tampa Comprehensive Plan in the introduction, that such as environmentally critical areas, and you can refer to the appendix. Respond to a community plan policies for opportunities for redevelopment or infill that maintains the single-family character of the area, but allows for a greater range of residential housing types, such as accessory dwelling units. This does not do that. It does not maintain the RS 60 characteristics. NE Policy 1.1.2, continue to protect and enhance single-family neighborhoods by providing transitions between the neighborhoods and adjoining areas. Once again, it would take away from the overall character and livability of the neighborhood. It is obvious and backed up by the competent substantial evidence that was presented by your own development planning staff in their analysis, citing the Tampa Comprehensive Plan and Chapter 27-11, that you should vote to deny this petition to rezone to RS 50. And I had spoke to LaShawn earlier, and she discussed this in her briefing to you, but I don't see it. There we go. I, in my analysis, actually took out the zones that were different, the RS 50s and the PD, and as she pointed out, it only made a % or 2 difference, but it still upheld the conclusions that were reached by your city staff. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, sir. Next speaker, please state your name. And if you have a speaker waiver form?
Yes.
Okay.
Michael Fanning, thank you, Sandy Sanchez. Thank you. 2 additional minutes, please. Total of 5.
Yes, ma'am, go ahead. Please state your name, start the clock, 5 minutes.
Hi, my name is Carol Ann Bennett. I have lived in Virginia Park for 33 years. I am the treasurer of the Virginia Park Neighborhood Association. In 2018, dozens of volunteers went door to door talking to our neighbors about the epidemic of lot splits in Virginia Park. We talked to hundreds of people. We tallied their vote on whether lot splits were in character with our neighborhood. These people are experts on Virginia Park, and an overwhelming majority, I won't give you copies of this and make you look at this, but these are the door-to-door, face-to-face conversations that we had with hundreds of residents in Virginia Park and tallied their opinion on the lot splits. The overwhelming majority hated the rezoning and very strongly believed it harmed our neighborhood's character. They are experts on their neighborhood. The comp plan specifically, repeatedly mandates the protection of a neighborhood's character. The city code specifically, repeatedly says the development pattern of a neighborhood, the development pattern creates a neighborhood's character. And it specifically, repeatedly states the 1,320 feet must be what is considered when analyzing the development pattern. It is the only distance for analysis in the code. 73% of the homes within the 1,320 feet are conforming lots. Therefore, the development pattern of this neighborhood is 73% conforming lots. In addition, this street, Corona Street, is majority conforming lots. So why? Why would you create non-conforming lots? There is nothing in the code that supports going into a neighborhood where the majority of the lots are conforming and perversely creating a non-conforming lot. The code specifically says you must not do that. That is why staff found this inconsistent. In addition, there is a hidden poison in this rezoning that will have serious consequences to the many large oaks on this property. Let me explain. In 2018, builders asked City Council to rewrite the tree code. A group called Tree Something Say Something was formed so citizens could have a voice in the process. We met once a week for a year and a half. We met with builders, we met with city staff, we met with City Council. This resulted in a collaborative tree code that consisted of compromises by everyone. One of the most painful compromises our group made was something builders desperately wanted, a tree removal zone, or TRZ. This allows the administrative removal of trees on a small lot. No notice to the neighbors, no variance, no appeal to city council. It gives automatic removal of trees on lots with a frontage of less than 65 feet. That is critical. Lots with a frontage of less than 65 feet. This lot is larger than 65 feet, so it cannot use the TRZ loophole. But if council creates 2 lots, they will be smaller, and the builder can use the TRZ to administratively remove large oak trees, including a grand oak. This lot has at least 6 specimen and grand oaks that can be preserved very easily if one house is built to replace the one house that is currently there. But if you split it, the TRZ becomes an option for the builder, and some of those large oaks will come down. No tree survey was done by an arborist with precise measurements. Some of these trees will be in the new TRZ, and without a certified tree survey, the builder cannot guarantee otherwise. And remember, the zoning runs with the land. No matter what this builder promises, they don't have to do it. There's a second threat to the trees on this property. RS 60 has a 25-foot setback, front setback. RS 50 has a 20-foot setback. That means that in RS 50, the TRZ is 5 feet bigger. That means with the RS 50, we lose 5 feet of green space, and we no longer have room for trees in the front yard. Right now, in the front yard of this property, there are these 3 large oaks, one of which is a grand oak. And as you can see, the footprint of the current house leaves plenty of room for these oak trees. If you grant these rezonings, these 3 trees will be removed. Even if they aren't in the TRZ, or even if they weren't in the TRZ, the smaller front setback will mean they won't have enough room. The grand oak and the specimen oaks are currently thriving there, but they will be removed. If you approve this rezoning, you will be creating non-conforming lots in violation of the code and the comprehensive plan, and you will guarantee the removal of at least 4 healthy specimen and grand oaks that South Tampa desperately needs for flood mitigation, cooling, air quality, and the prevention of stormwater runoff. Please uphold the staff finding of inconsistent, protect the critical infrastructure of our tree canopy, and deny the creation of non-conforming lots that are out of character with our Virginia Park neighborhood. Thank you very much.
Next speaker? Yes, sir. Please state your name.
Hello, my name is Benjamin Turek. I live in Virginia Park. I moved to Virginia Park in 2009 with my wife. We have 2 young children. And my concern is a lot of what I've heard here today. Our neighborhood conforms to larger lots. That's the beauty of our community. It's open. The other challenge is the flooding. Adding more houses and more density will increase the flooding that we already have issues with throughout our community. Furthermore, last year I know there was a lot of talk about rezoning Plant High School because of overcrowding, and I know that that is still a hot topic that we'll be talking about, and adding more homes to an already overcrowded high school is just a recipe for disaster. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, yes, sir, please state your name.
Thank you. Kevin Dunn. I am a resident of Virginia Park, but I've also acted on the VP&A, Virginia Park Neighborhood Association Board in the past. I want to build on a couple of points that Carol Ann had shared. What we've done as a neighborhood is consistently query and say, what is your perspective? What do you want? Not just the few people who are dedicating some time and are willing to put in a little extra work. Just to show you here, this is from...
Turn it the other way.
There you go.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. This is a recent survey from 2023. We've consistently done this where 79% of residents, not just the few people that are here, oppose lot splitting, that being lot splitting to less than 60 feet. So just want to reiterate that this has been done every 2 years for a consistency of current and accurate data to help understand what our mission as the neighborhood association should be focusing on. So just another point, every time one lot is split for the city report, you're changing the denominator. You're making that next calculation that much easier. So frankly, every time you do change, you're moving the goalposts for that next calculation. So I personally like to see these denied, and on behalf of the other residents' perspective who oppose lot splitting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Yes, sir, please state your name.
Thank you. Carl Walker. I live catty corner on 3916 West Corona Street. I hate to say it, but I'm probably the historian. I've been there for 23 years. I never thought I'd be a historian at anything, but I want to just show a couple things here. Right across the street from me, that's the lot of Mary Beecraft. So Mary Beecraft has addressed you a couple times in here. I would drive her to the meeting. She was in her 90s and wanted me to drive her here. She still actually drove, but she passed away about a year and a half ago, and one of the main things that she wanted was her lot to be a single-family home. So she didn't put it for sale. She let her heirs let a couple people bid on it. They bid on it, and now it has been sold to a developer to be just one home. So, but she was really, really strong as far as she didn't want the lots split. That it really hurt the not the value, but hurt the aesthetics of the neighborhood. Just a couple other things. You know, I mean, I live right catty corner across, and you know, if they do build these up, I mean, they're going to use maximum square footage, and you know, it's going to be a zero lot line. So yeah, I'm totally against that. Just living there for the last 23 years, I thought the traffic was bad, you know, 20 years ago. You know, if any of you live in South Tampa, you know, Beta Bay and McDill and West Shore, it's tough sledding. It's actually dangerous. So that would be a huge concern of mine. It just continues, and you know, there has to be an end in sight. Schools would be another factor. On Corona Street, there's cars lined on the street, just tons of cars. So this would add more cars that are lined on the street, which I feel is another problem. And as aforementioned, there's 6 oak trees on the property, so I'd be, I'd be opposed to those oak trees in the front coming down, especially the grand oak. Most of my neighbors who are here, it's great. They've either added on to their home, they've made their property of 100 feet, 120 to 100 feet nicer, better, or they've developed into another single-family home. Most of them, I know that it was 50 at one time, and everything was rezoned to 60. So we did that for a reason. So I would be opposed to this, as a lot of my neighbors and many people that aren't here. I could name the names, but I know they gave you the list as well. So I thank you very much for your time, and have a great night.
Thank you very much, sir. Yes, sir. Please state your name. Do you have a speaker waiver form? No? Go ahead, sir.
No.
Please state your name.
Thank you. My name is Michael McNabb. I'm a 50-year resident and property owner in Palmacia West since 1975. I'm a member of THAN and the president of Palmacia West Neighborhood Association. We're the neighborhood directly north of Virginia Park, and our neighborhoods are very similar. We have similar housing, a mix of old and new houses, similar zoning issues, density, infrastructure problems, flooding. We're very similar, and we try to work together on similar rezonings like this. And that's why I'm here tonight, to speak against this rezoning on Corona Street. On November 23rd of last year, I spoke against a very similar lot split in our neighborhood on Cameron Street. It was a corner lot like this one, a large lot, and you voted against that. It has become fashionable to buy a lot in South Tampa with one house on it, and then ask you to ignore the zoning in place and split the lot into 2 buildable lots with a PD or spot zoning. Virginia Park, in my neighborhood, wants you to preserve the zoning that the city put in place. The property owners who have built new homes without lot splits expect you to abide by the rules that they had to abide by when they built their houses. Non-conforming lot splitting is not in keeping with the character or preservation of Virginia Park, as the report said. There's nothing unique or special about this property. There's no hardship here, or if there is, it's self-created. 50-foot parcels are the exception, as the city analysis shows. The request to split this lot is purely economic. This is a quasi-judicial hearing, and you must base your decision tonight on competent and substantial evidence. The city report, which does not support this rezoning, and the testimony by the neighbors is such evidence. Sympathy or wishes of the property owner or developer cannot be considered in your deliberations. You unanimously voted no to the November 23rd lot split on South Cameron. I ask you to vote no to this rezoning. Thank you for supporting our neighborhood associations and respecting our zoning requirements and property rights. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Yes, sir. Please state your name.
Norman DeLaPuyade at 3914 West Obispo Street. I, too, moved in the year 2000. I've been there 23 years. I live in an older bungalow that was added on to and was over a 100-foot lot, which was sold off, a portion which was sold off to a neighbor, and now my lot's 90 feet, and it's a very nice size. I walk my dog past this property at least 3 to 4 times a week, and this is one of the nicest lots that I see available in the entire neighborhood, along with the one directly across the street that was mentioned, sold by Mary Beer after her passing away. And that lot was highly desirable. People were bidding on that lot. This would be the same situation. You don't need to put 2 houses on this lot for any economic reasons. There are all sort of technical reasons that have also already been mentioned. I just think that it would be an injustice to add more houses to such a nice property. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much, sir. Yes, sir. Please state your name. You have 3 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Nathan Hagan. The lot split is obviously compatible with the future land use permitted. The discussion is about whether it's compatible with the development that surrounds it. When we talk about the comprehensive plan, the one that's currently adopted is for 2040. It's not for 1980. It's for the future, not for the past. The point of the plan is to guide growth. The point of the plan is to create more housing over time and define basic rules for how that occurs. The point of the plan is not to put any neighborhood to freeze it in time, to bring it back to a previous era. This is not a make Virginia Park great again story. This is making Tampa great for the future story. So when we talk about preserving neighborhood character, and we're spending an hour talking about a lot split in one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in the city of Tampa, you have to consider the broader picture of what's happening here. This is one neighborhood and one set of people. The people who need smaller lots are not being represented. I think it's important when you think about lot splits to consider that the question here is really not so much about the number of people, it's about the size of the building. If this is redeveloped, and it will be redeveloped eventually to something, will it be a 5,000 square foot, $2 million, $3 million house, or will it be 2 2,500 square foot homes? By not allowing lot splits in neighborhoods that are already wealthy, what you're saying is that you're trying to preserve the inaccessibility of that neighborhood to more moderate income people. You are saying that 2 families that cannot afford a $2 million home are not allowed to compete under city rules for land in that neighborhood. That those people are less than because they're not wealthier, they're not allowed to compete by law. To me, that's immoral. I also would say that same dynamic is the reason why minimum lot sizes and why lot splits are needed were put into the comprehensive plan when we first adopted Euclidean zoning almost 80 years ago. There's a reason why big lots are in some parts of town and not in other parts of town. The reason why East Tampa and West Tampa and Ybor have small lot sizes and Virginia Park historically does not. We should not be preserving the things that are excluding people from different parts of our community in the city of Tampa. We should be figuring out how to move away from them, how to make housing in Virginia Park more accessible to more types of people. I can tell you a 5,000 square foot home is not a policy win. You should consider whether 1 mega mansion is preferable to 2, unfortunately, smaller McMansions. I would love to have more units here, but at a minimum, we need to split this lot. Every lot in Virginia Park should be eligible for split. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Yes, sir.
And last but not least,
Well, we have one more online, bud. You're the, wait, no.
Good evening. I'm Eric Weinstein. Thank you for having me. I'm a 30-year resident of the neighborhood.
What's your name?
Eric Weinstein. I'd like to bring to your attention there have been numerous requests similar to this, one street over, within the last few years. Most recently, the house or the lot directly next door to this lot was brought to your attention for the same reason. Mary Craft opposed that, as did most of the residents. That was not approved. There have been significant changes to the neighborhood in the 30 years that I've been there. I don't see any $2,500 square foot homes being built in the neighborhood, regardless of the lot size. So I'm in an original structure surrounded by very large structures. It has had a significant negative impact on drainage on my property. And I would ask you to be consistent in ruling, as you have in the past, with the other requests in the general area and not approve the request for this split. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, ma'am. Please state your name.
I'm Casey Martinez, and
Yes, ma'am.
I live on Corona Street on this block. You know, can see this house from my house. And one of the problems that we already have in Virginia Park is there's not enough parking. You know, anybody over the age of 16, everybody has their own car, and navigating the streets is like an obstacle course, as it is. With two homes like this going in, and I agree, I want to say, there are no 2,500 square foot houses being built anywhere in South Tampa that I know of, because for the price that was paid for this property, 2,500 square foot houses they're not gonna turn a profit, and it's all about profit. And I don't see any benefits to this lot being split this way. The roads already in bad shape. The more cars you put on it, the more, the worse it's gonna get, as well as drainage. And the big thing is the school system that's already overcrowded. And I just wanted to, reiterate, I know a lot of people have said that same thing, but thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Yes, ma'am. Please state your name.
Good evening, Stephanie Pointer. First of all, if they build two homes to the setbacks on this lot split, they can be 6,000 square feet each. So let's not fool ourselves that these are going to be little tiny houses on these little tiny lots. It doesn't happen very often, but when I was 16 years old, they rezoned this whole area to RS60. Oh my gosh, they actually did something that now makes sense, because now we're getting deeper and deeper into the coastal high hazard, and this isn't very far from it. It may not be there yet, but the next time FEMA comes through, I'm gonna bet that it probably will be. While I agree with my friend Nathan about affordable housing, this isn't gonna be it. And I would venture to remind you that South Tampa, according to the comprehensive plan, is supposed to have the least amount of growth. Well, we haven't gotten to the new comprehensive plan yet. I suspect it's going to continue to say that. I'm pretty sure of it, as a matter of fact. So let's look at putting density in University Square, where they had 1% growth this year, but the city wants all the growth. The folks who plan say that's where we're supposed to have the density. And, oh, by the way, please don't forget that whole 35% of our trees are already gone in South Tampa, and it didn't happen with those giant apartment complexes that I can't stand. That happened one lot at a time. Are we going to let these trees be victims of greedy builders? That's the question. Please vote no. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If there's no one else in person, I have one individual registered online. Is Joe on? And if Joe is on, please turn on your camera, raise your right hand, and we will swear you in.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give?
Yeah, we don't
Can you see him?
Yeah, our screens are blank here. They're just showing, I guess, what the overhead is showing, and then the main screen is just showing the meetings.
Can you see him now?
Yes, please raise your right hand, sir. We'll swear you in. Thank you.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth?
And please unmute yourself.
I do.
Very
Can you
good.
guys hear me now?
Go ahead, sir.
Perfect.
Please state your name.
Great, thank you. My name's Joe Eas. I live on 4006 West Corona Street, so across the street from the subject property. Thank you for hearing me tonight. I see a lot of my neighbors in the room. Hi, neighbors. I'm here to actually support the rezoning application. I think something that's important to consider in this discussion tonight is the nature of not only the lot widths and the lot sizes, but the houses that are being built on the lots. My opinion on this matter essentially is that I don't believe a change from RS60 to R50 is going to make an impact on the neighborhood in the same manner that the people are expecting it to. I understand some of their concerns, and I agree with some of those concerns, but on the whole, I think this application is well within range of something that could be built on an R50 lot. The existing lot size of 113 feet actually is more in line with being a minority in the neighborhood. So if you turn the contextual analysis around on lot widths and calling that an R50 lot would be inconsistent, I think you can make the same argument that a 100-foot wide lot is actually inconsistent with the neighborhood. On a typical standpoint, the 100-plus foot lots in the area are actually, I believe there are 47 of them out of the 538 that were noted on the exhibit in the staff report, which equates to about 9% of lots. So in reality, this lot itself is sort of an outlier as it currently exists. I think the comprehensive plan nailed a lot of the items that are important to future growth of Tampa. And I think that's something to be considered here during this meeting. I think other than that, that's all I had to add. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That concludes our public comment. Yes, sir, Mr. Shelby.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Martin Shelby, City Council Attorney. I just want to again, for council and for the record, just to be clear that several references were made to, let's say, surveys or polls or petitions with regard to people's opinions or preferences. You know, but I want the public to know as well, and for the record, that that does not constitute competent substantial evidence. You've heard evidence at this hearing that you have to apply to the criteria, but for your knowledge, of course, and for the public's, that people's personal preferences, absent, let's say, an expert opinion, that's something different, but that's not competent substantial evidence, and that should not factor in your decision as you weigh the evidence.
Like Joe Friday says, just the facts, right? All right. All right. No, we have time for rebuttal from the applicant. Yes, sir. You have 5 minutes rebuttal time.
Thank you. John LaRocca again, representing the applicant in rebuttal. For the record, there were 12 people who spoke this evening. The 2 that spoke, or I interpreted to be in favor of this request. And I understand the comments that were made by those that are opposed to the idea of lot splitting in this area. I don't know the 2 people that spoke in favor or implied. The irony leading into the rebuttal by Joe Diaz are a good summary of what my comments are as to the points I was making earlier this evening. Obviously, you have a comp plan that establishes goals, policies, and objectives. Yes, there are criteria about doing analysis for the area that was analyzed that you get every time one of these requests come in. And I think there are judicious decisions that have to be made on every case individually. I think in this particular case, when you look at the lots, what isn't analyzed is all of these lot configurations and dimensions. What actually is built on those particular lots. There's 47 lots that are 100 feet wide. I think it's safe to say that an RS60 zoning was 6,000 square feet, where in this case we have 2 lots. One is only 8 feet shy, because of lot width, is one of those cases within those 47 100-foot wide ownerships that should judiciously be considered, and what cases occur when you read everything together, what makes sense for something that can be considered. If the comp plan was clear that you must prohibit land uses and not make these decisions that are judging what cases are appropriate and what are not, I believe this is one of those cases where it is appropriate. I believe there are a lot of other lots in this area based on lot configurations and ownership that may not be appropriate. I don't know, I haven't studied them in detail, but we're not talking about all of these lots that are all going to be split. It's an area of unique character, primarily larger lots as they currently exist in ownership that have a variety of homes. Placing two homes in this area, whether they're 2,500 square feet or 3,000 square feet apiece versus one home that's going to be a mega home or whatever term you want to use, it's not going to substantially change the character of the area. I summarize, and I don't want to get into exactly, the intent here is to create two lots meeting the site development regulations of the RS60 district. Both lots are in excess of 6,000 square feet. The only issue here is that one of the lots is 8 feet less than what the code requires. In fact, I made on behalf of the application originally was only to rezone the one lot that didn't meet the requirements. But for, I guess technical and staff reasons, we talked about typically because it's one ownership, we do it as one application. The intent here is to recognize Lot 23 as a lot of record that meets all of the characteristics of the RS60 district except that width. And again, it's one of those cases that, to me, suggests that City Council should give it proper judgment in terms of it being appropriate. We understand all the comments that were made this evening. I understand many of them. I've witnessed those comments. I live in Palmacia, not far from this area. We went through a rezoning and, I supported, quote, the downzoning from what was permitting potential for duplexes. The reality of it is the majority of the lots were rezoned to RS50, and it made sense for what was evolving in that particular area. This is one of those areas that I believe City Council has to make a judgment. There's going to be some unique pockets within neighborhoods like this. It's not unique to this neighborhood, and I respectfully ask for your consideration of approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Yes, ma'am? Is there a revision sheet? Is there, I don't know.
No, thank you, Council. LaShawn, Dock Development Coordination. This is a Euclidean rezoning request, so there is no revision sheet, but I just wanted to state for the record, I know there's been mention of the zoning in RS60 and meeting requirements. So the request before you is to rezone to RS50, residential single family, and that would allow the lot to be split, and it would be developed at the RS50 standards, which have been provided within the staff report. So the request is for the RS50. Even if the lot ends up being wider than the minimum 50-foot width in the RS50 zoning district, that's the request before you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, we had a motion to close from Councilmember Clendenin. Does that motion still stand? It still stands. Do we have a second? Second, Councilmember Vieira. All in favor? Aye. What is the pleasure of council? Yes, sir, Councilmember Carlson.
I move to deny REZ 23111 for the property located at 4001 West Corona Street due to the failure of the applicant to meet its burden of proof to provide competent substantial evidence in the record that the rezoning is consistent with the comprehensive plan and city code. I also adopt the findings and reasoning of the city staff report. Based on a whole series of competent substantial evidence that was presented us, but one of them is failure to comply with applicable goals, objectives, and policies in the comprehensive plan as noted in the Planning Commission staff report, such as the proposed zoning does not comply with land use policy 9.3.8, which requires residential redevelopment projects to be minimally disruptive to adjacent areas, failure to comply with land development code in the city staff report regarding compliance with general standards such as the area of analysis prepared by staff establishes that the proposed rezoning does not promote or encourage development that is appropriate in location, character, or compatibility with the surrounding neighborhood. Within the areas of analysis, only 30% of the lots have been developed with a width of 59.99 feet or less, and only 41% of the subject block, 35% of the block east of the site, and 33% of the block face have lot widths of 59.99 feet or less. The city staff found it inconsistent. There are concerns about schools. There are concerns about parking and the over parking on the streets. Also, there was competent substantial evidence presented by neighborhood leaders regarding, and I could read these, but land use policy 9.3.8, land use policy 9.5.1, land use policy 9.5.2, land use policy 9.5.4, land use policy 13.2.6, land use objective 1.2, land use policy 1.2.3, land use policy 1.2.5, land use policy 1.2.10, and land use policy 1.2.16. Further, the Tampa City has presented the City of Tampa Municipal Code Section 27-11 says, in part, no yard or zoning lot existing at the time of passage of this chapter shall be reduced in width, depth, or area by private action below minimum requirements for lots or structures as set forth in this chapter. No division or reconfiguration of existing zoning lot or lot of record may occur that is a configuration which is patently inconsistent with existing lot development pattern in a radius of 1,320 feet of the subject property. Lots of record may not be reconfigured in conflict with the established pattern of lots within a radius of 1,320 feet. The creation of a substandard lot size will cause each new lot created from the original parcel to be in violation of this chapter.
We have a motion from Councilmember Carlson. Do we have a second? Second from Councilmember Vieira. Let's have a roll call vote.
Let me speak on that
Yes,
motion, if I may. I know some of you who have spoken here pretty well. And if there's to be a study to be made, there's a study on what's happening north of Kennedy and south of Kennedy. You see, sitting here and listening and understanding, and I appreciate your concern, but things that were mentioned about flooding and stuff of that nature, supposedly, and I mean, you use that word very carefully, supposedly, under the new construction areas, you're supposed to hold your water on your land. And I assume they do that, but I'm not sure. I don't go out and check on a regular basis. However, we want to do studies. Let's study how many lot splits are done north of Kennedy and past, and how many lot splits are done south of Kennedy and fail. And if you go north of Kennedy, for whatever reason, 100% of them pass. And you go south of Kennedy, very few pass. And some I voted against, and some I voted for. But when you go north of Kennedy, everything is free game in West Tampa and in East Tampa. And I wonder why. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
So I want to address a little bit of that as well, because I think part of that is that, and there's a couple things came up in public comment, is, you know, where do we want density development? And, you know, our higher ground, as we smartly develop the city of Tampa, we want density development in areas that are not necessarily on the peninsula, which a substantial portion of it, now this is not, but a substantial portion of it is coastal high hazard. When we talk about South Tampa in general, a lot of it's coastal high hazard area, so we don't want to increase density. And, you know, and of course, you know, people have heard me, I coined the phrase that South Tampa's full, because quite frankly, our infrastructure is very limited. We're not on, this is not on a transportation corridor. There's really no incentive when you talk about smart urban planning to increase density in this area of town, where we have areas like Sulphur Springs and University area and these other areas that are just crying for redevelopment. And, you know, what we've seen in the higher areas of Tampa Heights, as we've seen this redevelopment and density, smart redevelopment and density that is enhancing the city of Tampa. So those are the areas that we need to increase density at. Also in the public comment, there was a discussion about, these happen one at a time, and if you continue to approve them, of course, then your development pattern changes. I will say that, sometimes the buck's got to stop. I've only been on council for 7 months, but I look at some of these plans and I question, past councils. I can't fix those, but I can evaluate the issues that come before me today to stop those issues from happening. I agree with staff's assessment about the current development pattern of this neighborhood and maintaining that development pattern, which is in accordance with our codes and our laws. So I'm going to support the denial on this. But again, I think there is a difference between the south of this peninsula that's surrounded by water that is really fully developed and so many other areas of the city of Tampa.
We have a motion from Councilmember Carlson, second Councilmember Vieira. Let's get a roll call vote. This is a motion for denial.
Henderson, Vieira,
Yes.
Miranda,
No.
Carlson,
Yes.
Hurtak,
Yes.
Clendenin,
Yes.
Maniscalco.
Yes.
Motion to deny carried with Miranda voting no. And Henderson absent.
Thank you very much. That concludes our agenda. I'll go to new business. Councilmember Miranda.
None.
Councilmember Vieira.
Yeah, a couple quick things if I may. I motion, many of us know the organization Community Stepping Stones in Sulphur Springs, and I motion for staff to report.
Wait, we're still holding a meeting.
I motion for staff to report on potential funding, and I'm not looking for a great amount of money. So whenever we do our, budget requests for nonprofits, different issues like that, we can identify organizations. I feel, and especially, and Councilwoman Hurtak has brought up some issues with the curfew that's been proposed and the need to, fund social services. And I know some of us visited this organization, Community Stepping Stones, and this is something that is really, really, really in the right direction of where we need to go as a city. So I do motion for staff to report on potential funding, and again, not looking at a great deal of money to start off, to support Community Stepping Stones, a nonprofit organization dedicated to using an arts-infused curriculum to inspire and mentor youth in our city of Tampa, and that this be reported on May 2nd. And I'm fine with just a written report on this, by the way.
We have a motion from Councilmember Vieira,
Long
second
motion.
Councilmember Carlson for May 2nd.
Yes, sir.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Then, second, if I may, on next week, and I don't think I really need a motion on this, I was going to have Nat Ross come and speak on his experience as a Holocaust survivor, and Nat unfortunately passed on. God rest his soul. He was an Auschwitz survivor. He was about to turn 102, and he passed. So I don't think I need to do a motion to amend or anything, but the Jewish Community Center Federation was going to come. They are going to come, but just to let council know, speak on the observance on the 27th on the Holocaust, and that's it. I don't think that requires a motion, but just FYI, if it does, let me know. Next, I was going to have next week the update on the Tampa Fire reimbursement resolution, but it appears that Local 754 can't make it for next week. So I want to move that to the following week, which is the first week in February. So that will actually lighten our January 25th schedule a great deal, right? Which is good. But also important, I want to hear, number one, from Local 754. When we spoke on this a few weeks ago, we didn't hear from Tampa Fire Rescue, and I'd really like to have somebody here on Tampa Fire Rescue, because this could really radically improve services, and I do want to hear from them as well, obviously. So, and by the way, the extra time, I think, will give us some additional time to address some of the issues that were brought up in terms of, and it's my understanding that as presented, that's what's going to happen, but to further assure council in discussions that this program for Tampa Fire Rescue, as proposed, is done year by year, is done separately, We're not eating the whole enchilada at one time, but that does give more time for staff to, and for the union to speak with Tampa City Council. So if I may, I move to, move that to the following week, the first week of February. Yes, ma'am.
Yes?
Question. Council, I believe in terms of planning your schedule, did you want this done under staff reports in the afternoon?
It's
I
all
just want to
good.
be clear because the morning might be, yeah, okay.
That's where it is now.
Okay, but I just want to be clear about that. Thank you.
So, and thank you for that, Council. So I'm taking off about 45 minutes or an hour from next week's. I got a request for something that is a favor from a wonderful woman who we all know.
Wait, let's take a vote.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Motion from Councilmember Vieira. What was the second? Second, Councilmember Clendenin. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Council. And lastly, many of us know Tanya Lewis, who is is publicly battling right now cervical cancer, and she's undergoing, God bless her, right now chemotherapy, radiation. It dawned on her that January was or is Cervical Cancer Awareness Month, and she wanted to come to speak to Council for 5 minutes. Or so on her experience as a patient with cervical cancer. She is going to be speaking to the county commission a few days before. So in looking at the agenda, we do have some stuff at the beginning, and I wanted to see if we could get maybe a time certain when we return from lunch at 1:30. It'll just take 10 minutes. And so that's my motion. And you know what? I'll motion, she had requested either a commendation or a resolution. I'll do a commendation to her nonprofit.
Okay.
And it'll just take 5 or 10 minutes.
We have a motion from Councilmember Vieira, second from Councilmember Miranda. All in favor?
Aye.
Anything else, sir?
That's it. Thank you, Council.
I have nothing. Councilmember Clendenin.
Nothing.
Councilmember Hurtak.
I'm sorry, next week, 25th.
After lunch. So I had something to discuss with everybody tonight. There's no motion, but it's something I want you to think about, and I'm not sure how to bring it back, so I wanted to talk about it. We've been talking about affordable housing, and you all just reappointed me to the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee. Now, that committee itself, it's required by the state to have the committee, but the committee itself is not really sure what it's doing. It's trying to reimagine its role. And right now, it includes affordable housing builders, nonprofits, funders, and community members. And currently, I report sort of on what's going on with council. So as they talk, I'm like, oh, well, we just, approved the hotel into those micro units. We just did this, we just did that they might not know about. But it occurred to us at our last meeting on yesterday that the committee itself is not reporting to council. And so I'm asking you to think about what types of things you might want the AHAC committee, with all of these really knowledgeable folks within the affordable housing community, what kinds of things would you like, and I'm happy to act as the liaison, but what kinds of information would you like us as a committee to bring back to council? And tonight you could answer, we could stop, and we could do a new business next Thursday to answer.
I would, next week is
It's really busy, so we can.
Yeah, perhaps if we can bring it up under new business and just have a brief discussion.
Why don't you put it on the agenda for February 29th?
Actually, well, because I wanted to talk about it a little bit before.
Then we have a regular session February 1st. Gives us 2 weeks and.
Well, so I would just like some initial thoughts February 1st, and then we can go further after the 29th.
Let's set it up
as a staff, like
under staff reports and just.
But a conversation.
Yeah, a conversation.
Okay, so that's kind of what I wanted. I wanted everybody to have a chance to think.
How often do you all meet?
Every month.
So can we get a report every month?
Yeah, absolutely, and that's what I'm saying. And they really want to help.
Yeah, they might have some better ideas.
Exactly, but I want to be able to be that conduit. So I just want you to think about what kinds of things you want to hear from this committee.
Could we maybe ask the clerk to send us minutes for the last 2 or 3 meetings in advance of that discussion?
Oh, absolutely. The AHAC meeting, that's the problem. There's so much we could be doing, but we haven't been. So yeah, we absolutely.
Just so we have an idea what to ask for, because I don't even know.
Yeah, that would be from April Espinoza. So she's the one that keeps the minutes for the AHAC. So we can ask April to send, we didn't have a meeting in December, so January's and November's minutes. And And let's talk about it again on February 1st during new staff report.
We'll do it
kind of-
as like the last
Yeah,
staff
the last
report
staff
before
report.
new business,
Yeah.
and we can have a conversation about it.
Yeah, that's my motion, to have a conversation on February 1st during staff reports at the end about AHAC and its role with providing guidance to council on
We have a
affordable
motion
housing.
From Councilmember Hurtak, second from Councilmember Miranda, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It's fair, I mean, because if we discuss stuff like now during new business, what's the difference, you know? So, but we'll keep it as an actual item at the end of staff report.
Yeah, and then I will make sure that those minutes get to you, and we will, because I can't talk to anybody offline about it, so this is our only space.
Anything else?
No, thank you all so much. I'm really excited about what we can make this committee and how it can help what we're trying to accomplish.
Councilmember Carlson?
Just a couple quick things. Louis, what's the name of that park that community stepping stone's in?
You know, I don't remember.
It's a county park.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's Hillsborough County.
So what they told me is that it's
Manwaring.
owned by both the city and the county.
Manwaring Park.
Manwaring Park.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, the museum there.
what I would like to do is make a motion to ask Parks and legal staff to report on May 2nd as to the ownership and management of Manwaring Park, just adjacent to your item, just so we can clarify what the responsibilities are. I don't know if the city does any programming there at all. It sounds like the county mostly manages it, but if there's some confusion about ownership, we could answer the question publicly at that time.
We have a motion from Councilmember Carlson, second Councilmember Vieira, this is for May 2nd in conjunction with Councilmember Vieira's motion. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Just further to that, as you all know, I'm against creating a new CRA, but we can direct funds, especially if we put a cap on downtown CRA, we can move funds into Sulphur Springs. But we need to do some kind of visioning in Sulphur Springs about what people want and do some kind of, have some kind of discussions. And so I don't know the form of that yet, but I just wanted to throw out that's something that we need. So anyway.
So, you know, Sulphur Springs was a very vibrant area, you know, 100 years ago, but even less. I mean, my mom can tell you stories from the 60s of businesses that used to be in the Florida Avenue, Waters Avenue, Bush Boulevard corridor, and they would go all the time. But now it's changed significantly, and that's an area that I hear a lot about. It's not just East Tampa, it's Sulphur Springs, Sulphur Springs, Sulphur Springs, and then, you know, further discussion on other parts of the city. But, yeah.
If we create a CRA, it would have a few $100,000 for 5 or 10 years.
Yeah.
We could move $5 million in there in 1 year and really transform a lot of things, for example.
Yeah, and
So-
it needs it. The community has asked for it so many times, so.
Well,
Is that a
yeah.
formal motion or no?
No, not yet.
No, but I mean, as we're doing this workshop on the 29th, I mean, getting the ideas, once we have some ideas, absolutely, we can just take the money, move it, and do something.
Yep. All right, motion to receive and file? So move. Motion from Councilmember Miranda, second from Councilmember Vieira, all in favor? Aye. We are adjourned.